My husband knocked out my brother for calling me a wasteriskry, and now my parents want me to choose. What is the right choice? Original post. Sorry for the throwaway account. I have colleagues on my main account and I want to keep this as private as possible but also need advice. As my title says basically. This past weekend me and my husband were over at my parents' house for a BBQ. The day was going great until my brother for some reason started to have a go at me. Calling me names and belittling me. My husband pulled my brother aside and had a talk with him and the insults stopped. An hour or so later we were standing around talking with some friends and family members and my brother came up to me and told me I'm a whore. His exact words were, "You know you are a fucking whore, right?" He said it loud enough for almost everyone at the party to hear. All I saw was my husband next to me look at me, then I felt a push to the side. My husband stepping in front of me and the next thing was my brother out cold on the ground with blood on his face. All I heard is my mother yelling and my husband saying, "You don't talk to my wife like that, I warned you already." Before I continue, my husband didn't hurt me, he didn't push me hard or anything like that. Don't know how to describe it but it was like a push that someone will give you when they are trying to pass. I went like one step back, that is all. I am not mad at my husband. I'm mad at my brother. The whole day he was demeaning me, insulting me, belittling me. I don't know where this came from as he has never talked to me like that or to anyone that I know of. The bigger problem is that I have to choose. Either my husband or my parents. My parents are pissed and have given me an ultimatum. I either leave my husband and divorce him or they cut me off completely. My husband doesn't give a crap that they are mad, the only thing he is mad about is that he only got one punch in his words. I love my husband and don't want to lose him but I also don't want to lose my parents. They have supported me through a lot and have always been there for me. I know they are serious as this is the first time they have ever issued me with an ultimatum. They also threatened my husband with an assault charge but he didn't care and welcomed them to do it. I'm stuck between a decision that will change my life forever and I'm panicking. I have received messages for friends and other family members that have given me support and condemned my husband but they are leaning more on the support side. Any advice will be appreciated. Edit to clarify I'm choosing my husband. I have never questioned that but I also don't want to lose my family. I am very family oriented and family to me is everything. I want to find a solution where I can keep both. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Info: why do your parents think it's okay that your brother called you names? What is their excuse? OOP. They haven't excused his actions but they are condemning my husband for resorting to violence. Commenter 2. What kind of family does this stuff? It sounds very dysfunctional. What were the circumstances whereby your brother goes off on you like that? Now your parents issue an ultimatum? I appreciate that your husband stuck up for you, but that was a terrible political move. OOP. One thing about my husband, he is sweet and gentle but he has never cared what someone else thinks about him other than me, and his own mother. OOP's thoughts on violence and how her husband had done this to her brother. OOP. My husband doesn't resort to violence. I have never seen him really angry and what I saw in his face was just anger. I don't know how to describe it. This is the first time I have seen him react violently to anything. My husband doesn't care at all. The only peoples whose opinions matter to him is mine and his mother. My brother as well has never talked to me like that at all. This is the first time. OOP's husband needs to earn her parents' forgiveness for what he has done to their son/her brother. OOP. My husband honestly doesn't care. When I asked if he would apologize for reacting with violence just to keep the peace, he told me my brother and parents can go fuck themselves. My husband has tried to cheer me up, but he hasn't pushed anything on me. He hasn't given me an ultimatum to choose him or anything. He apologized for putting me in the position with my parents but he isn't sorry for knocking out my brother. In my husband's words, I asked him nicely to stop and I did tell him he will face the consequences if he continued and he didn't listen. He doesn't care what people think of him, the only opinions that matter to him are mine and his own mother. OOP on if she had dated someone before her husband. Any chances that her brother called her names for another reason like cheating? OOP, no. My husband was my first and I have never done anything else with anyone except my husband. Update. First, I would like to thank everyone and I want to apologize as well for the way I worded my post. It's no excuse but my emotional state isn't the best. Unable to link my previous post, just look at the account. My husband is my choice and I have no intentions of leaving him at all, never have. I know it's early for an update but I'm more confused now about what is going on. My parents invited me over to have a talk with them but they wanted me to come alone as they didn't want my husband at their house. My husband refused to let me go alone and said if he isn't going then he won't allow me to. He basically said with you alone there they will just pile on you and that I won't let happen, so we went together. My parents weren't happy to see him and my mother wanted to say something until my husband told her he isn't there for them but me and if he is forced to leave I will leave with him. I agreed with him. Reluctantly they agreed. My brother was there as well. He has a broken nose and chipped teeth and refused to look at me or my husband. He just kept looking at the ground even while talking. Apparently what happened with my brother is that he broke up with his girlfriend a month ago. It's more like she broke up with him. Don't know the reason. Don't care. I wasn't aware of this as we aren't close like that. According to him the reason he had a go at me this weekend is because of my life. According to him, my perfect life with my husband kept popping up on his feeds and he got jealous. Everything on my social media is with my husband. I don't really use it for anything else but his feed was full of my posts and that set him off as I had something that he didn't. It got worse when he overheard me and my mother talking when I had a discussion with her over children. Me and my husband are currently trying to have a baby and that just made everything worse in his head. His life was falling apart and mine was going perfectly and was trying to have what he wanted with his ex. He said he didn't take my husband seriously when he pulled him aside and my husband warned him. I seriously don't know why he went after me as nothing he said was true in any sense and I did ask him why he said those things. He refused to answer me. I asked him why the whore comment because he knows my husband was my first in everything and it has only been him all these years. He refused to answer. I asked him if trying to have a baby with my husband makes me a whore as it involves sex and he just left the room. I asked my parents why they didn't step in and tell my brother to leave or stop. My dad said he wanted to but my mother told him to leave my brother as he is not actually hurting anyone. The same with the ultimatum, they wanted to protect my brother. I asked what about me and they were silent. All my father said was the ultimatum was my mother's idea and he went along with it. This is basically where we are at the moment. A lot more was said but I don't think it matters. My husband did apologize to my parents for what happened but refused to apologize to my brother. When my mother asked him to apologize to my brother he outright said no. He won't apologize for standing up for me and my brother got what he deserved. He was warned and didn't listen. My mother said it still doesn't excuse him for hitting my brother. My husband asked my dad what he would do if someone called his wife a whore. My father said I will have a talk with that person, but will never hit someone. My husband laughed and told my dad he is a weak-willed, spineless man if he allows someone to demean his wife like that. That got my mom red in the face. I could see her get angry. That is when I told my husband it's time to leave. I told my parents that I will be going low contact with them and the ultimatum they gave me broke the trust I had in them. I understand they wanted to protect my brother but in doing that they hurt me. This seemed to take all the anger out of my mother. They asked if I will be cutting them out completely and I told them that is up to them. I don't want anything to do with my brother at the moment as he can't even apologize for what he said to me. I told them if they can respect my wishes we will see. When we got up to leave my husband went over to my parents and actually still greeted them politely but told my dad it's time to grow a backbone. I don't know what I saw but I think it was a shame on my mother's face because my dad looked at my mother and she looked away from him. This is where we are at the moment. My husband on the way back home apologized for possibly escalating things but told me it was time someone told my dad the truth. He said whatever punishment comes he will take and deal with any fallout. I don't need to worry or stress about anything. Edit, my brother's ex cheated on him, and apparently he begged her to fix things but she chose the other guy and now he is just pissed and angry at every woman and believes we will all do that eventually. Got a message from my cousin. The family had a go at my parents for allowing my brother to talk to me the way he did and they came clean as to why he did what he did, but couldn't do it when I was over and we talked. They couldn't be honest with me and just refused to answer. Additional information from OOP. OOP. Honestly, really thinking about it. The only person I have felt genuine unconditional love and support from is my husband. There are a lot of things I just swept under the rug and thought it was siblings things, but looking back whenever my brother had a difficult time it was taken out on me in some way and my parents have never stuck up for me. My husband has had my back around every corner and has never thrown things in my face like my parents or brother have. OOP on her parents' relationship and why they are not hearing her out. OP. My father just follows what my mother said. In my 26 years of life I have never seen my dad go against my mother with anything. Anything she says or wants to do it fine with him no matter the cost. For instance, my dad basically has no friends as my mother didn't like them so he gave them up and hasn't made new friends because when he tried my mother finds something she doesn't like about that person and he agrees. OOP should have gone alone to talk with her parents and brother about her husband's behavior. OOP. So I should take the way he worded it over the fact that he wanted to be there and make sure I'm not getting gaslighted. I took it as he want to ensure I'm safe and what happens doesn't happen again. My wording is bad as my emotional state isn't the best. That is on me, and I should have probably double-checked everything before posting, but his emotional state can't be any better than mine. He is dealing with everything, and on top of that he is trying his best to keep my mood up. I know it sounded bad, but I took what he said with all the other actions he took so far to keep me safe. My fiancé lied about being fluent in Korean for 3 years, and now I don't know what to think. Original post. I've been with Jimmy for 3 years now. We first met in college and we pretty much instantly hit it off. I'm full Korean while he's half Korean, even though he doesn't look like it at all. I was slightly disappointed when I found out that he didn't speak Korean. Pretty much everyone in my family speaks it, so more than anything I thought it would be an issue, but it wasn't. He told me that he didn't know it, but he was studying it, which I thought was a nice gesture. He met my parents for the first time and they speak English but prefer not to speak it much. My parents complained to me pretty much the entire night and even badmouthed him quite a bit because of his actions and not understanding. I didn't know at the time, but I really defended, and although most dinners at my parents' house were fake nice to him, I tried my best to stick up for him. The first time my parents met his dad and his sister, they spoke very poorly of them. It was downright insulting. His dad had some pretty rude, weird behavior that was frowned upon. I would always talk with my parents on the phone while we lived on campus, often on speakerphone, and Jimmy would just kind of play dumb. Even with my friends, many of them were very rude to him after I told them he didn't understand it. He proposed to me at our favorite park 3 months ago in Korean, and I was so blown away by it. I thought it was the sweetest thing in the world. I cried for joy and happily accepted. I was so proud of him. Fast forward to last week, one of Jimmy's old-time friends had returned from his assignment overseas and met us for dinner, a really nice and respectable guy. And he talks and just full-blown starts speaking in Korean to Jimmy, and I'm taken back. Oh, he doesn't know much, he's still learning. The guy scratches his head and goes, Jimmy is the guy who helped teach me Korean. What are you talking about? And at first I didn't know what to think. I was relieved and excited that Jimmy actually knew it, but the more I thought about it, the more angry I became. When I confronted him about why he didn't tell me sooner, he said that when his mother passed on his 18th birthday, he stopped speaking altogether and just started telling people he didn't understand it. He said that it reminds him of her. Which is understandable, but I don't know if I can accept something like that. When I told my parents, my dad was overjoyed while my mother had a panicked look on herself as she recalled all the nasty things they said about him and his family in front of them. My dad seemed to brush it off and fully understood Jimmy's reasoning for not speaking it anymore, but I don't know if I can be so forgiving. I feel like he's been secretly spying on me for the past 3 years. He lied to me about it. Even my friends, he treated everyone so kindly even though they all at some point talked bad about him. I don't know if he's noble and romantic or if he's just been using it to his advantage. Our relationship is otherwise perfect, and it seems like such a silly minor detail to get upset over, but I don't know. Any outside perspective or input? Am I wrong for not letting this go so lightly? I think he should have told me way sooner. TLDR, I found out through an old friend of my fiancé that he actually speaks and understands Korean fluently despite him telling me that he was learning it. I feel relieved yet betrayed and deceived. I don't know if I should let this go or what. Relevant comments. Caracat. Your parents and friends were acting rudely. They should apologize to him and hope he's happy to forgive. As for you, you're in a relationship for 3 years yet never took an interest in how his Korean studies were going or tried to have a conversation with him to practice what he's learned. OOP, not really. I would say little phrases here and there and he would respond according for the most part. I never actually sat down with him because everyone says they'll live a language someday. I didn't think he would actually stick with it. He always studied on his own time. Another kitty. I can understand being upset about being lied to, but I think what you're feeling is probably a lot of embarrassment about how your parents and friends acted. Sometimes people who are biracial are used to not being accepted by one or both sides of their cultures. No matter what he does, to some people Jimmy will never be Korean enough, even though that's part of who he is. You need to understand this, because if you have kids and they look a little like him, they might be treated like Jimmy one day too. Don't you wonder how your boyfriend was able to sit through all that abuse and not say anything? And why he would still be with you after all that? If anything, he has a right to be mad and judge you for having these kinds of people in your life. But maybe he is a calm enough person to know that when people say bad things about you, it shows you more about their character than yours. Or maybe, sadly, he has seen this kind of negative and judgmental behavior before from other relatives. I suspect that this might be the case. He is used to people judging him because they've judged all his life and he has learned to just brush it off. Like I said, I do understand feeling upset that he was completely honest with you. You want to be in a relationship with someone who is able to trust you. And 3 years is a long time. However, I can understand where he's coming from too. Talk it over. See if you can use this to come to a deeper understanding of each other. Maybe you can use this to become a stronger person who can stand up to your relatives and friends more. Or be a better example at least. And maybe you can have a better understanding of his heart and character. This may put a distance between you, but you can also choose to let it draw you closer. OOP. I'll admit a lot of my feeling is embarrassment after that dinner. When we got back to our apartment, I looked him in the eyes and cried like a little baby. I didn't really know what to say or do, and the only thing in my mind was how shitty my friends and family were to him and how he would face them over and over again willingly. You make good points, and I do think I'm being selfish trying to make this about me when it should be him or us. I want to see it in a positive way and use it to bring us closer. I guess I'm just like my parents when I say I have this small doubt in the back of my mind preventing me from doing so wholeheartedly. Update. First, I want to say that I admit I was totally wrong for trying to make this about me, and I realize my parents and friends as well as myself were all horrible people, which I agree with. I spoke with Jimmy the same day I posted the thread. I actually invited him over to my parents' place for dinner, but before that I stopped by his parents' house to apologize to him, his dad and his younger sister for everything because I felt so embarrassed and horrible. I apologized profusely to his dad, who did nothing but laugh. His dad was beyond understanding and actually spoke Korean quite well himself. He actually laughed, saying that he understands why my parents were the way they are. He even told me about the story of when he first met Jimmy's mom's parents in Korea and how much she warned him about their behavior. He said that she explained it to him and he understood and was able to respect where their concerns were coming from in terms of wanting to preserve their language and all heritage. He told me it started off rocky, but they shut up so fast when he surprised them and spoke it fluently. He said his relationship with her parents is stronger than ever, especially since she passed away, and he calls them twice a week just to chat. He said that when he heard that I stuck up for Jimmy, he was proud of me even though he never said anything. Jimmy's sister, she's only 12 but is super sweet and mature for her age. She said that when Jimmy started dating me was the day he started teaching and talking to her in Korean again. It was really precious the way she described it. His dad talks to her as well, but she really likes when Jimmy does it. As for Jimmy and I, we've been working together to resolve our communication issues, and we've spent a lot of time talking all about us. I admitted all my concerns and he addressed them one by one and told me exactly what I needed to hear. He apologized for keeping it from me for so long and told me that he didn't do it maliciously. He just didn't want to associate Korean with the negativity that my parents and friends brought. Which I find is extremely understandable. He said he regarded the language as something pure that he and his mother often shared together, that he didn't want to engage in with my parents and friends. He admitted that it probably sounded silly, but I understood him on an emotional level. He told me about how close he and his mom were. We had never talked this in depth about it before. And I cried like a little baby because I could tell how much he loved and missed her. He told me that she always warned him about the complications of marrying a full-blood Korean while he was a teenager, and he didn't truly understand until he met my parents and friends. I even found out that Jimmy was born and lived in Korea for 12 years. I feel like our relationship is stronger than ever. My doubts and worries are gone and we're going to be a lot more open with one another. I'm ashamed I ever tried to doubt him. He has been speaking Korean to me a lot more exclusively since I've apologized to him. Most probably won't understand, but he took me to see his mother's grave and it was probably one of the most touching moments I've ever had with him. I kneeling beside him listening as he told her about me, basically how he knew he had found the person he would make new memories with and how he would have to go back on a promise. I don't think I've ever cried so much in my life. I couldn't even stop. We had dinner with my parents on Tuesday and Jimmy spoke to them in Korean for the first time and my parents apologized for their tongue. I think I didn't make it as clear as I should in my original post, but after I defended him they cut back significantly. Jimmy apologized for their years of disappointment, teasing them for their original concerns. He told them a little about his mom, and when he told them his mother's maiden name, my father's eyes lit up. He didn't really go into detail, but he thinks he might have known of her family. It made him extremely chatty and open. I've never seen my father so excited to talk to someone before in my life. Jimmy also brought up that his family are planning a trip to Korea this summer and he offered to pay for all of us to come with them. My parents haven't been back in years and they happily accepted his offer. Jimmy is wonderful, really. I'm lucky to have him and I'll never let him go. Thanks for the advice. Edit. Jimmy's apology to my parents for years of disappointment was in a joking manner, not something sincere. It was meant as a joke and everyone laughed about it. Sort of like breaking ice or easing the tension in the room. TLDR. Apologized to Jimmy and his dad and sister, learned about Jimmy's mother and a bit about his past. He's decided to speak Korean more. He forgave my parents and even offered to bring them to Korea with his dad and sister near the end of the summer. All around, everything worked out perfectly. Relevant comments. Fixler Gumblies? This is all fine and good, but still your parents and friends who talked shit are pretty bad. Luckily your fiancé is actually Korean enough and we don't need to belittle him to his face. My parents and friends are very bad for talking shit in Korean when they thought he couldn't understand. I realize the magnitude of their actions, and I've even told Jimmy that if he wanted us, or just himself, to go low or no contact with them, then I would totally support and understand. I think my first post exaggerated the number of times they did. Then after I defended him the first time, they cut back significantly. If Jimmy is willing and able to forgive them, then I'm just going to leave it at that. No point in me forcing an issue that he doesn't seem concerned over. He's a much better person than myself for sure, because I would hold it against them. But Jimmy values family bonds quite highly, and he wants to have a relationship with my parents, and he wants me to keep a good relationship with them as well. As for my friends, I'll be cutting many of them out of my life. Donnie Punani, I'm sorry, but I have to ask, how is Jimmy so forgiving of your parents? It seems like they were being downright shitbags to him for absolutely no reason. Is that a custom or something? Don't speak our language, we'll just talk shit behind your back. I'm surprised Jimmy could forgive your parents, but he's a better man than I am. I'm just a little upset at my own culture's exclusivity superiority complex. It's just so annoying at times. I feel the same way, and honestly Jimmy is one of a kind, I feel like, in terms of forgiveness. But, after talking to him about his mom and family, I realize that he regards family very highly and doesn't believe in cutting ties over insulting behavior. He told me that his grandparents are guilty of this superiority, exclusivity complex that my parents seem to have had. All I can say is that we'll try our best to break this cycle, at least with our direct families. And I'll teach my future kids the importance of respect regardless of appearance or race or tongue.
My best friend confessed his feelings to me. I rejected him because I already had a crush on someone else. In response, he became hostile, spitefully speaking of both me and the guy I liked. Unable to bear the criticism, the boy I liked abandoned me. Ever since we were kids, Jake and I had been inseparable. We met in elementary school, bonded over our mutual dislike for the cafeteria's mystery meat, and from there, a friendship blossomed that seemed unbreakable. We shared secrets, homework answers, and countless inside jokes. As we entered high school, our worlds grew larger, but our bond remained solid, or so I thought. Jake was the kind of friend everyone wished they had. He was reliable, funny, and always there when you needed him. So, when he asked me to meet up at our favorite local diner one chilly evening in October, I didn't think much of it. It was our go-to spot for celebrating good grades, nursing broken hearts, and plotting future adventures. That night, I figured he wanted to talk about his latest video game obsession, or maybe vent about his parents, who were on his case again about college applications. But as I slid into the booth across from him, something felt off. Jake was nervous, fidgeting with the napkin dispenser, avoiding eye contact. I teased him, asking if he'd finally decided to confess his undying love for Mrs. Peterson, our eccentric but endearing English teacher. He gave a half-hearted chuckle but quickly grew serious again. The casual chit-chat felt heavier as we danced around the usual topics. Finally, Jake blurted out that he needed to tell me something important. I leaned in, expecting another one of his grand plans for a summer road trip, or maybe a complaint about his younger sister. What he said next, though, left me speechless. Jake confessed that he had feelings for me. Not just the kind of fleeting crushes we'd laughed about over the years, but real, deep feelings. He'd been holding on to them for a while, he said, afraid of what admitting them might do to our friendship. I sat there, my heart pounding, my mind racing. This was Jake, my best friend since the 3rd grade. The thought of him seeing me in that way had never crossed my mind. Sure, I cared about him deeply, but only as a friend. And there was another reason I couldn't return his feelings. I had a crush on someone else, a guy from my art class named Tyler, who was 20 and had the most amazing talent for photography. Rejecting Jake was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I tried to let him down gently, explaining my feelings for Tyler and how I didn't want to ruin the special friendship Jake and I shared. But as the words left my mouth, I saw the hurt flash across his face, quickly masked by a forced smile and a shrug. We left the diner that night with a promise to remain friends, but the air between us had shifted. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change, and not for the better. Little did I know, that conversation would be the turning point, marking the end of our friendship as we knew it. In the days following Jake's confession and my subsequent rejection, I noticed a subtle but unmistakable shift in our dynamic. At first, Jake tried to act like nothing had changed, keeping up his usual banter and meeting me for our routine hangouts. However, the effortless ease that once defined our friendship was replaced by a tense undercurrent of awkwardness that neither of us could ignore. I threw myself into my art class, finding solace in my sketches and the company of Tyler, whose presence became increasingly comforting. Tyler, with his quiet confidence and shared love for the arts, was a stark contrast to the complicated situation with Jake. As my feelings for Tyler grew, so did my guilt over Jake. I was caught between the burgeoning possibility of something new, and the deterioration of something once solid. Meanwhile, Jake's hurt began to manifest in ways I hadn't anticipated. It started with small digs, veiled as jokes, about Tyler's age and his artistic ambitions. I tried to brush them off, attributing them to Jake's struggle to adjust to our new normal. But as the weeks passed, his comments grew more pointed, and I learned from mutual friends that Jake was spreading rumors about Tyler and me. He painted me as someone who led him on, only to discard him for someone else. The tipping point came when I confronted Jake about the rumors. He denied everything at first, but as I pressed, insisting that our friends wouldn't lie about such things, he exploded. He accused me of being insensitive to his feelings, of not considering how hard it was for him to see me with Tyler. The conversation ended in a heated argument, with both of us saying things we couldn't take back. Jake stormed off, leaving me standing alone, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of loss. In the aftermath, our friendship group became polarized. Some sided with Jake, believing I had been unfair to him, while others stood by me, upset by how he was handling his hurt. The division made social gatherings awkward, and I found myself withdrawing, spending more time with Tyler and less with the group I had grown up with. Tyler, for his part, was supportive but understandably frustrated by the drama. He hadn't signed up for a high school feud, and the tension began to affect our budding relationship. I found myself defending him constantly, trying to dispel the lies Jake had spread, all while navigating my own tangled emotions. The strain was palpable, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was to blame for the unraveling of my once unbreakable bond with Jake. As the weeks turned into months, the situation didn't improve. Jake's behavior became more erratic, his hostility more pronounced. Attempts at reconciliation fell flat, with Jake shutting down any effort I made to mend our friendship. It was as if the rejection had flipped a switch in him, turning the once kind-hearted and loyal friend into someone I hardly recognized. Caught in this storm of emotions and conflict, I struggled to find my footing. My grades began to suffer, my artwork lost its joy, and the shadow of my fractured friendship with Jake loomed large over everything. The realization that I might never get my friend back was a bitter pill to swallow, compounded by the fear of losing Tyler too, to the chaos Jake had created. In the heart of the turmoil, a rumor that Jake had started about me being a two-timer, an insinuation that I was leading multiple guys on, was the final straw. The phrase, so juvenile yet laden with judgment, spread through our circle with surprising speed, tainting the image I had worked so hard to maintain as someone straightforward and sincere in my dealings. Confronting Jake about this particular rumor was harder than anything I'd faced before. The air between us crackled with tension as I approached him, my heart hammering against my ribcage, anger and hurt battling for dominance. The accusation was not just a blow to my reputation, it felt like a direct attack on my character, and from someone who had known me better than anyone else. "Jake, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the storm of emotions brewing inside me. He looked at me, the flicker of defiance in his eyes quickly masked by a semblance of indifference. "About what?" he asked, though the guilty shift in his gaze told me he knew exactly what the issue was. "About what you've been saying, about me being a fisherman." I spat the word out like it was poison. "You know that's not true. You know me." For a moment, there was a flash of the old Jake, the one who would have never entertained the thought of hurting me. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a cold, hard mask. "Maybe I thought I did," he said, his voice laced with bitterness. "But I guess people change, or maybe they just reveal who they really are." The conversation spiraled from there, voices raised, words we could never take back hurled like weapons. The hurt from his rejection, the frustration with my feelings for Tyler, and the pain of watching our friendship disintegrate exploded into a cacophony of anger and betrayal. In the end, there were no winners. Just two people standing amidst the wreckage of a friendship that had once meant everything. As the days passed and the storm of rumors refused to calm, Tyler and I found ourselves increasingly caught in the eye of public scrutiny. Despite our efforts to ignore the whispers and stares, the weight of public opinion began to take its toll. Tyler, who had always moved through life with a certain ease, found himself ill-equipped to handle the constant barrage of judgment and speculation. One evening, As we sat in the dim light of my small studio apartment, surrounded by my latest artworks, the tension that had been building between us finally reached its breaking point. Tyler, his usually calm demeanor frayed at the edges, voiced the fear and frustration that had been brewing in silence. "I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice barely above a whisper but carrying the weight of a final verdict. "It's not just about us anymore. It's about this circus around us. I thought I could handle it, but I can't." I tried to reach out to him, to bridge the gap that had suddenly yawned wide open between us, but my words felt hollow even to my own ears. The rumors, Jake's spiteful campaign, had poisoned what was pure and beautiful between us, turning it into something fraught and fragile. "It's not true, any of it. You know me, Tyler. You know who I am," I pleaded, desperation threading through my voice. But doubt, once planted, is a difficult thing to eradicate. Tyler looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw the struggle, the desire to believe, battling the weariness of constant defense. "I know," he said, and in those two words was a world of sorrow. "But knowing isn't enough. It's like we're fighting ghosts. Your past, the rumors, the looks. I'm tired, and I just can't." With that, he stood up, and with every step he took away from me, the future I had envisioned with him crumbled into dust. I watched him leave, a part of me screaming to run after him, to fight for us, but another part, exhausted and resigned, held me back. In the aftermath of Tyler's departure, I found myself adrift. The art that had once been my refuge now echoed the emptiness I felt inside. The canvas remained blank, mirroring the void where inspiration used to flourish. I had lost Jake, my best friend, because of a truth I had stood by, and now I had lost Tyler, the one I loved, to lies I had no control over. The journey from that point was slow and solitary. I learned to find solace in the silence, to appreciate the solitude that allowed me to reflect and heal. My art evolved, no longer just an escape but a way to process and to express the myriad emotions that the ordeal had stirred within me. As the final chapter of this turbulent period of my life came to a close, I found myself alone, grappling with a pain so profound it threatened to consume me entirely. Tyler's departure had left a void in my life that seemed insurmountable, a constant reminder of the cost of truth and the destructive power of rumors. The absence of his presence, once a source of joy and inspiration, now felt like a wound that refused to heal. The studio apartment, once filled with laughter and the promise of shared dreams, echoed with the silence of loss. My art, a reflection of my inner turmoil, became darker, the strokes on the canvas more frantic, as if trying to exorcise the demons of betrayal and abandonment. In the depths of my despair I reached out, seeking solace in the shared wisdom of others who had navigated the treacherous waters of heartbreak and emerged on the other side. I poured my heart out on forums, in letters to unseen friends, and in late-night conversations with anyone who would listen. The question that burned within me was simple yet profound. How do you move forward when the past clings to you like a shadow? And so, I stand at the crossroads of my own making, drowning in a pain that is both a burden and a teacher. I reach out to you, to anyone who has felt the sting of betrayal, the ache of lost love, and the weight of a world turned upside down. How did you find your way back to the surface? How did you learn to breathe again, to find joy in the sunrise, to see beauty in the broken? Finally, I want to extend my sincerest thanks to all of you who have taken the time to share your stories on Reddit. Please continue to journey with us, share your experiences, and together, let's create memorable moments. My best friend slept with my roommate who's about to get married. I couldn't keep this secret and chose to inform the roommate's fiancé, MITA. Living with my buddy Alex who was about to get married, and hanging out with my best friend Ellie was usually the highlight of my days. I'm 26, pretty laid back, and have always kept things simple. Alex, 28, had everything figured out, especially with his wedding around the corner. He and his fiancée Sarah seemed perfect for each other, like something out of a romantic movie. Ellie's been my best friend since our college days. She's full of life, always laughing and making everyone around her feel better. We were like two peas in a pod, but in a completely brother-sister kind of way. She often came over to our place, making our apartment feel more alive. But then, things started to change. Ellie and Alex began to get a bit too close, more than what you'd expect from just friends. At first I told myself it was nothing. Friends get close, right? The revelation hit me like a freight train one evening, when the apartment was cloaked in silence, and the city outside buzzed with life, oblivious to the storm brewing within. I returned home earlier than expected, only to find Ellie and Alex entwined in a way that left no room for doubt. They were quick to separate, their faces flushed with guilt, but the damage was done. The image was seared into my memory, a haunting reminder of the betrayal. It was clear they had feelings for each other, and those feelings had crossed a line. Ever since I found Ellie and Alex, my best friend and roommate, closer than they should have been, my world's been upside down. I wanted to be loyal to both, but my head was a mess. On one hand, Alex was about to get married, and on the other, Ellie has always been like family to me. The apartment we shared, which was once full of jokes and late-night pizza runs, started feeling more like a silent movie. Conversations became whispers when I walked in, and the air felt thick with secrets. I noticed the small things, how they'd suddenly stop talking or how Ellie's visits became more scheduled, especially when I'd be out. It made my chest tight, thinking about it all. I decided to keep it all bottled up inside because, honestly, I didn't want to be the one to cause a hurricane in everyone's lives. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I ignored it long enough, things would go back to normal. I didn't want to be the reason anyone's happiness got ruined, even if it meant putting on a fake smile every day. For 3 whole months I lived in this bubble of hope and fear. Hope that Alex and Ellie would realize their mistake, and fear, what would happen if Sarah, Alex's fiancée, found out. It was like walking on a tightrope, trying to balance everything and pretend I was okay with it. Every day was a challenge, trying to act normal around Alex and Ellie. I dodged conversations about relationships, love, or anything that could lead back to the secret I was keeping. It felt like I was living in a different world from them, watching from the outside. I began to pull away, spending more time alone, avoiding coming home. I started making sure they knew when I was about to come home, sending a text or calling to say, "Hey, I'll be there in 10 minutes. I thought it would help me avoid walking in on more moments like that. However, even with all my warnings, it kept happening. Every time I saw them too close, it felt like a punch to the gut. I started to dread going home. My place, which used to be where I could relax, now felt like the last place I wanted to be. So, I stayed out as much as I could. I hung out in coffee shops, wandered around the library, and did anything to stay busy and away from the apartment. It was like I was trying to disappear from my own life because every time I thought about facing them, I just couldn't. It felt like everything around me reminded me of how things had changed and how uncomfortable I felt in my own home. I felt like I was stuck in a really tough spot. Here was my best friend and my roommate, who was about to get married, sneaking around. I kept their secret for 3 months, trying to ignore it and hoping it would just go away. But it ate at me. Sarah, Alex's fiancée, had no idea, and it didn't seem fair to her. The weight of knowing about Ellie and Alex became too much. I felt like I had to do something about it. It wasn't just about being loyal to Alex anymore, it was about doing what seemed right. Telling Sarah about what was happening with Alex and Ellie was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. It felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders, knowing that what I was about to say could potentially ruin lives. But after months of carrying this secret, watching the strain it put on everyone involved, and feeling the weight of it crushing me, I knew it was something that had to be done. No matter how much I wished things could resolve themselves, the reality was clear. Sarah deserved to know the truth. Update. 3 months later, I decided to meet Sarah in a neutral place, somewhere public yet quiet enough for a serious conversation. I chose a small coffee shop in the park, a place that felt serene, hoping it would provide a calm backdrop for the storm I was about to unleash. I remember my hands shaking as I texted her, asking if she could meet me. I tried to sound casual, but every word felt heavy with the weight of what was to come. The day we met, I arrived early, my stomach in knots. As I waited, I rehearsed what I was going to say over and over, but the words felt inadequate. How do you tell someone their world isn't what they think it is? Sarah arrived, her smile bright, unaware of the news I was about to break. Seeing her happiness made what I was about to do even harder. I started the conversation with small talk, trying to ease into it. But how do you ease into something like this? Eventually, I just had to be straightforward. I told Sarah that there was something important I needed to talk to her about, something about Alex. I emphasized that what I was about to share was difficult for me, but I believed she had the right to know. Then, I told her. I explained that over the past few months, Alex and Ellie had grown closer, in a way that wasn't appropriate for two people who were just friends, especially when one of them was about to get married. I shared how I discovered them and the emotional turmoil I'd been through, deciding whether or not to tell her. I made it clear that my intention wasn't to hurt her but to be honest, because I believed she deserved the truth. Throughout the conversation, I watched Sarah's face change from confusion to shock, and then to something I couldn't quite decipher: hurt, maybe, or betrayal. She asked a few questions, her voice shaky, and I answered as honestly as I could, providing the details she sought. It was heartbreaking to see her process the information, to watch as the reality of the situation sank in. After telling her, I felt a mix of relief and dread. Relief that I had finally shared the secret that had been weighing me down, and dread for what it meant for Sarah, Alex, and Ellie. I offered Sarah my support, whatever decision she made about her future with Alex. I could tell she was shattered. I felt awful, but part of me knew it was better she heard it from me than someone else, or even worse, after the wedding. Walking away from that conversation was like leaving a part of myself behind. I knew things would never be the same after that, but I also knew I had done what I believed was right. It was a moment that changed the course of our lives, a decision made with a heavy heart but a clear conscience. The next few days were like walking through a minefield. Sarah confronted Alex, and the fallout was explosive. I wasn't there, but Alex made sure I knew he blamed me for everything. He came home that night, his face like thunder, and we had it out. "How could you?" he kept saying, over and over, like a broken record. I tried to explain my side, saying I couldn't just stand by and watch him make a mistake that big. But Alex wasn't having any of it. He saw it as the ultimate betrayal. Ellie, on the other hand, was a mix of angry and sad. She thought I had backstabbed them by not keeping their secret. Our friendship, once unbreakable, started showing cracks. She said she understood why I did it, but wished I hadn't. Our conversations became stiff, filled with awkward silences and unspoken words. It was clear things were never going back to how they were. The atmosphere at the apartment turned icy. Alex and I barely spoke, and when we did, it was just the essentials. It felt like I was living with a stranger, not the guy who had been my best friend. Ellie stopped coming over, and our group of friends picked up on the tension. Sides were taken, and suddenly, I found myself on the outside. It was like high school all over again, only lonelier. I started spending more time out of the apartment, staying late at work, wandering around the city, or sitting in parks just to avoid going home. The place I had loved, filled with so many good memories, now felt like a prison. The worst part was the isolation. Friends I thought I had in my corner slowly drifted away, unsure of how to navigate the new dynamics. The emotional toll was heavy. I struggled with guilt, wondering if I had made the right decision. Sleepless nights were common, and I found myself questioning not just my actions, but my judgment. Had I really done the right thing, or had I just destroyed relationships for the sake of my own conscience? Eventually, the situation at the apartment became unbearable. Alex decided he couldn't live with me anymore, and I couldn't blame him. The search for a new place was quick, I just wanted out. Moving out was a relief and a defeat all at once. It felt like I was running away, but I also knew staying wasn't an option. The day I left, the apartment was silent. Alex didn't help me move, and there were no goodbyes. It was a quiet end to a chapter of my life I had thought would last much longer. In the weeks that followed, the fallout continued. Sarah called off the wedding, and though she didn't blame me, our interactions were tinged with the sadness of what had happened. Alex and I lost touch completely, our brotherhood a casualty of the truth. Ellie and I tried to salvage our friendship, but it was like trying to piece together a broken vase. We could put it on the shelf, but it would never hold water again. Looking back, I wonder if things could have been different if I had stayed silent. But deep down, I know I couldn't have lived with myself. The price of honesty was high, and I paid it in friendships and heartache. But lying to myself and everyone else would have cost me even more. In the end, I learned that some truths are heavy, but carrying lies is heavier still. After the storm of revelations and the shifting sands of friendships lost, the days began to brighten for me. It wasn't immediate, the healing. It felt more like the slow bloom of spring after a harsh winter. I moved into a new apartment, a small but bright space that felt like a fresh start. In the solitude of my new surroundings, I found peace and, surprisingly, a sense of freedom I hadn't realized I'd been missing. The void left by old friendships made room for new ones. I dove into hobbies that I'd put on the back burner, joined a local soccer team, and even picked up guitar lessons. These activities brought me into circles I wouldn't have otherwise crossed, and through them, I met people who brought new perspectives and laughter back into my life. As for Ellie and Alex, time proved to be a great healer. Ellie reached out first, a tentative text that opened the door to reconciliation. Our friendship, once fractured, began to mend, not as it was but into something new, more mature. We acknowledged the past but chose to focus on the future, celebrating our new paths and supporting each other as we always had. Alex's journey took longer, but a chance encounter at a mutual friend's wedding brought us back into the same orbit. The initial awkwardness gave way to a heartfelt conversation, where apologies were exchanged, and forgiveness was granted. It was a reminder that while friendships can break under the weight of secrets, they can also rebuild, stronger in the broken places. My career took an unexpected but welcome turn when I was offered a position at a startup. The work was challenging but rewarding, and it came with the added bonus of travel, allowing me to see parts of the world I had only dreamed of. On one of these trips, I met Maya, a fellow traveler with a thirst for adventure and a kindness that drew me in. Our connection was instant, and what started as a shared journey through foreign lands blossomed into a partnership I had longed for but never found. Years down the line, as I reflect on the tumultuous period that reshaped my life, I see it not as a time of loss but as a crucible that forged my character and my future. Ellie, Alex and I, though forever changed by the events, found a way to coexist in each other's lives, a testament to the enduring strength of true friendship. And with Maya by my side, exploring the world and building a life together, I am reminded that sometimes, the hardest roads lead to the most beautiful destinations. Happiness, I learned, isn't the absence of pain or conflict but the resilience to move through it and find joy on the other side. My story, once marked by betrayal and heartache, is now a narrative of growth, forgiveness, and new beginnings. And for that, I am profoundly grateful. Finally, I want to extend my sincerest thanks to all of you who have taken the time to share your stories on Reddit. Please continue to journey with us, share your experiences, and together, let's create memorable moments.
My brother's fiance's prank on my husband led to a defensive reaction, causing tensions that make me reconsider attending their wedding. Original post. I am 25F, my husband is 30M. My brother 32M and his fiance 31F recently came to visit us in our city. My partner and I are new homeowners and they were staying with us for the first time. My brother's fiance loves Halloween. She is also a Disney adult and has a childlike side to her which comes out sometimes. She's just super involved, absorbed, when it comes to her interests. Anyway, I'm just sharing this for context because my perspective is that she often gets carried away and I genuinely feel what I'm going to describe was the result of one of those moments where she just took it too far and suffered some negative consequences. She is, however, taking it as a very personal attack. So we disagreed and the disagreement resulted in my husband cutting their visit short, aka they were asked to leave. 31F has made comments more than a few times now since meeting him, that my husband gives off a dark vibe. She is always comparing him to characters from various books she reads. It's not necessarily criticism, she always explains that they are compliments. Well, I'm not sure anymore. Her reasons for these comparisons are based on his looks, the general vibe he gives off and his tattoo. He only has one, but it's on his hand. During this recent visit, she mentioned she would love to see someone like him get scared because she can't imagine him getting startled or letting out a scream. Scaring him became her goal during her stay with us. None of us knew about it, not even my brother. The incident causing all the trouble is that she tried to jump scare my husband in the garage. It was dark and she ambushed him in the garage while wearing a full outfit and mask when he was returning from a run. Well, he didn't let out the scream she wanted. He instinctively reacted by shoving her against the wall. She hit her head and was quite shaken up. Luckily he realized very quickly by the sound she made that it likely wasn't an intruder. He switched the lights on and pulled her mask off. He told me he was very confused at the moment. Why would she attack him? My husband helped her inside, apologized, made her tea and then called me. I was out with my brother. When we got home, I asked 31F if she was okay and I said her prank was stupid to do because she could have gotten seriously hurt. I don't know if it was what I said that bothered her or if she was just waiting for her partner to come home, but she launched into crying about how my husband used an excessive amount of force knowing it was most likely her just doing a harmless prank. In a nutshell, my husband asked her straightforwardly, "Are you implying I intentionally assaulted you?" She hesitated but chose to say yes and my husband responded to that with "Get out of my house." I tried to smooth it but my husband was adamant if that's what she genuinely believes, she's not welcome to stay. 31F chose to stick to her accusation. I decided to side with my husband. My brother is angry with me. He thinks I should have tried to do damage control and let them stay by convincing my husband to lean more into apologizing and placating his fiancée who was just recovering from the situation. He thinks this whole thing would have blown over if I'd helped my husband fold. I find this unfair. My brother was counting on me to handle all this, yet he didn't speak up during the conversation or try to talk sense into his fiancée. My husband remained calm the entire time, but he obviously felt insulted by her remarks and I think that's valid. Why should I have taken my brother's fiancé's side over my own husband, especially when I feel like she was wrong for doing all that, then turning around and accusing my husband of wanting to hurt her? My brother says I was short-sighted and should think of their upcoming wedding, but I think he is the one who needs to get his fiancée to apologize to my husband. Editing to add the text below, in an attempt to answer some things that are getting lost in comments. I would like to clarify, when I meant I tried to smooth the situation, I was not taking 31F's side or doubting my husband in any way. I simply tried to get everyone to consider tabling this until emotions had cooled down. And by those emotions, I mean the hysterics of my brother's fiancée. My husband was calm throughout, although there was an obvious finality about his decision. He made his statement and disengaged. As mentioned, my brother looked to me hoping I'd persuade my husband, but I didn't, so they had to leave. The costume. I mentioned in a comment that I didn't get an opportunity to ask that night if she bought an outfit specifically for this prank, or if it was my brother's Halloween costume. They go to adult Halloween parties, and we're attending one this weekend 2 hours from where we live. It was part of my brother's costume. A mask, like a golden masquerade one but more coverage. It reminded me of the gold-jeweled animal masks from Squid Game, or something you'd wear to a Rothschild party in the 70s. And she had on a long robe cloak with a hood. People asked me to update. I will do that. Please look at my comments too in case I already answered a question you might have, but I think these two were the ones I saw pop up the most. I'm sorry I can't keep up with all the comments. I really tried. I will be showing this thread to my brother. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. Info, what did your brother say when you explained how he should have leaned into having his future wife apologize because the whole thing would have blown over if he'd help her fold? OOP. He kept sticking to her being in shock and having the right to be upset because she got hurt, slammed against the wall. So instead of having a meaningful response, he kept downplaying her behavior and making excuses for her. He is saying he didn't want to invalidate her at that moment and that's why he stayed silent. And he feels that as a woman I should have spoken up to convince my husband to take full blame, try to make it up to her. I guess I'm learning a lot about my brother's relationship dynamic. Commenter. She seems inappropriately fixated on OP's husband. Why was she even pranking him to begin with? Do they normally have jokey banter? This is just so bizarre and I don't understand her thought process. OOP, I don't understand either. My husband has no banter with her. They don't have much of a rapport. All her impressions about him are just superficial ones she's made. She doesn't even know him. But she's the type of person who believes she is really good at reading people and convinces herself she's figured them out and what kind of person they are. She has tried guessing things about him in the past and she gets them wrong because she is basing him off her assumptions. I am sure she does this with other people she meets too. Could it be racially motivated? I don't think her behavior is racial. From my knowledge. She doesn't see him as a Disney villain but rather, like a dark type of character from books and TV shows and stuff. I shared her being a fan of Disney because I was trying to express that she gets really carried away by her interests and I think she loses sight of important things because she's too focused on whatever template she's referencing. He is just a calm and stoic person who is not very talkative. He is not shy, so I think he comes across as difficult to read and maybe a little intimidating because of that. He's just someone who observes more, isn't overly chatty and she doesn't even know him. She just fills the gaps in her knowledge about him with assumptions of who she thinks he is because she thinks she's good at reading people and figuring them out. She's not and has assumed wrong things about me too, but this is something she boasts as a skill of hers. I said it in another comment too. She makes confident guesses about my husband, but often gets it wrong. Dark. Oh wow. I'm learning via comments what dark actually means. And I don't get it, because my husband is not a mean person at all. I wouldn't even say he is brooding. He is just straightforward, calm and controlled and not a yapper like myself and the rest of my family, and her. Unapproachable. I can understand a little because of his stature. Being more of the silent type tends to make someone feel that way from a distance. But he has the warmest smile to bridge that. Sorry to hijack your comment, I know what you were saying. I honestly want to read some of these books now, just to try and see what she sees of my husband in all this. Because I don't see that. Update post. I got a lot of messages requesting an update. I have never made one before so I hope I'm going about this correctly. Editor's note, remove the recap. I tried to talk to my brother multiple times after the incident but each attempt ended in silence because I refused to give in to his demands. He wanted my husband and me to apologize to his fiancée, starting with me downplaying the whole situation so she wouldn't feel bad about her prank. I hesitated to send him the Reddit post I'd made. Initially, I thought it might work against us to make things worse. But his total inability to reason with me or see the situation for what it was became beyond frustrating. Since I couldn't physically deliver a cold hard slap to his face for asking me to be complacent and allowing my husband to be falsely accused of assault, I figured the next best thing would be for him to read all your comments. Following the advice I got here, I tried to get ahead of the situation by informing my parents. My dad, a reasonable and practical man, immediately sided with my husband. His comments were similar to what a lot of people here had said, focusing on how dangerous and reckless the prank was and the ramifications of being falsely accused of assault. My mom, who unfortunately has always favored my brother, suggested we at least hear her out, referring to my brother's fiancée. As livid as I was about her reaction, I wasn't surprised by it. My dad did try to shut down her skepticism, but she remained on my brother's side for a few days, until I showed them footage from my brother's Tesla, which he had tried to delete. The Sentry thing, sorry if I'm using the terminology incorrectly, I'm not a Tesla owner, recorded part of the interaction in the garage, not the jump scare itself. But the aftermath, which EMO was more crucial. My husband's account was confirmed. He used a measured amount of force to immobilize her and was prepared to escalate if necessary, which is beyond generous for someone to do in a situation like that, and definitely not owed. Many of you speculated that she might have a fixation or even a crush on my husband, and I'm starting to reconsider some past interactions with that in mind. I also misunderstood what a dark book she expressed she enjoyed, and compared my fiancé to. I learned from comments here that they are actually a subtype of the romance genre. I didn't know she was comparing him to characters in romance novels because one of the characters I recall her comparing my husband to was from a book about dragons. I genuinely wish I still remembered the names of various characters she's mentioned over the months so I could satisfy my own curiosity, but my brain glossed over the names during conversations. We have a group chat for the wedding, which includes my brother, my parents, my brother's fiancé, and her parents. In that chat I addressed the incident but didn't share the Tesla footage, only mentioned that it exists. Her parents didn't respond in the chat, though I know they saw the message. Later, her mom called mine. Apparently, they had no idea about the prank. It's hard to say whether they believe me or if they've taken their daughter's side after speaking with her. My brother's fiancé, and my brother, have both extended apologies to my husband, and have requested our presence at their upcoming wedding. My parents, trying to keep the peace, have encouraged us to go, saying it's the honorable thing to do. So, for the sake of family formality, we've decided to attend. However, my husband has made it clear that we'll be there out of obligation. We will be keeping a distance from them going forward. We haven't explicitly stated it, but there will be no future invitations to our home, not even for the holiday dinner we had planned before all this happened. My husband is going to minimize all future interaction with my brother's fiancé. I don't think we'll ever trust her again. I'll try to spend some one-on-one time with my brother to gauge where we stand. Our relationship feels strained, and this incident has made me realize that I lost him to her long before this happened, something I hadn't fully recognized until now. Thanks to everyone for sharing your opinions. A reporter from a news outlet reached out to me and I remember requesting that if anyone uses my story, I would like them to pass on the following sentiment. I hope that if you share my story, you can help highlight the dangers of ambush-style pranks. These types of pranks create a threatening environment and put everyone involved at risk of serious harm or injury. They are stupid and dangerous. No one should have to feel threatened or be put in a position where their safety is compromised for the sake of a prank. If that's the setup, then it's not a prank. Actions like these will always have consequences, some of which may be irreparable. And no prank is worth the risk of someone getting hurt. Editing to add a little footnote, I understand people get curious and invested. But please consider this my final update. If necessary, I will update again in the future, but it will be unlikely and I assure you it won't be anytime soon. I got a lot of DMs requesting updates on the previous post, so I thought I'd place this disclaimer here. And another edit to fix the formatting. I wrote this post in my notes app first, which was a dodo move apparently. Sorry I suck at this. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, please make sure to keep a copy of that video and if possible a written statement from your future SIL. She can always backtrack and try to ruin your husband's life with a false accusation. OOP, we have a copy. My husband pulled the footage the night the incident happened while the rest of us were still talking. I didn't mention it in an edit because he was waiting to see if my brother would be willing to show it to us himself and I was going to send the post I made to my brother. When my brother didn't bring it forward, I revealed it. Commenter, how did you get the footage from your brother's Tesla? Oop, he used my brother's phone to unlock it. You just have to bring it near the car. The phone doesn't have to be unlocked or anything. He pulled up the event and recorded a video of it with his phone. I know you didn't ask, but I'll just add this next thing too so other people can see more easily since I sometimes can't keep up with answering all the comments. When it came to apologizing, my brother refused to be honest and claims he might have accidentally deleted it because he has, apparently, a habit of deleting all the footage since it records unnecessarily a lot and he rarely reviews it back. He claims since my husband got in and reviewed it first, the tablet in the car didn't show the notification for him when he turned the car on when they were leaving. He assumed it didn't record an event. Commenter. I think, since they both apologized, you are making the right decision by going to the wedding, but still keeping your distance in the future. Is the video good enough to see the look on her face after the prank went bad? OP, it started recording when he reacted to her, not before that. I'm guessing because it got triggered by the movement. I don't own a Tesla, but from walking past it myself while my brother was staying with us, I noticed it would record me. You can see the eyeball thing, when I would be grabbing something from my extra freezer, which is in our garage. I wouldn't have to touch the car or anything for this to happen. When the incident happened, my husband said it also flashed its lights suddenly, which was disorienting. The recording had that ghostly night vision look in the dark, so unfortunately both parties looked a bit weird in the footage up until my husband turned the lights on. When my husband shoved her against the wall, she had the mask still on, so you can't really see the look on her face. When he pushed it off, turned on the lights, he was obscuring her so no Scooby-Doo unmasking moment was caught on camera. Right after that, he backs off and is just exasperated. She is seen fixing and smoothing her hair repeatedly and has one hand on her chest, or heart I guess. I'm sure she was shocked, scared at the moment, but she accused him of slamming her knowing who she was, and that's not true. The video confirmed he slammed her before that, and just before the Tesla flashed the lights. At no point does she look afraid of him or anything like that. Edit to emphasize, the footage shows he doesn't touch her in any way after unmasking her. Commenter. I thought about it in the first post and I'm thinking about it now. What was her endgame? What did she want as a reaction? Or did she go in with head empty and no thoughts of energy? OP would be well advised to keep her husband far, far away from her STB sill until she starts showing some evidence of keeping fiction separate from reality. OP, my take as a person who has never read much romance books is that she just wanted to see if she could be the one to startle him. Like maybe she wanted to hear a girly scream escape my otherwise stoic husband who she doesn't really know anything about. Like not even enough to compare him to some fictional guys. I feel like this by itself would be viewed as an accomplishment by her, if she could claim she is the only one who has gotten such a reaction from him, brag about it. It seems juvenile. But she has bragged about similar things. Commenter, out of interest, is your husband objectively conventionally attractive? OP, maybe not in the chiseled male underwear model who looks too perfect kind of way, but he is objectively handsome. He is very tall with dark hair, athletic, and has good bone structure. But he's not flashy or someone who likes to draw attention to himself, so I don't know if his personality fits. He isn't brooding or morally gray or domineering. He is reserved, hard to read. I said in the other post that maybe his persona can come across intimidating from a distance because he's not very chatty and doesn't yap. But his smile can bridge that easily. He's not menacing. Or macho. Or controlling. Or cocky. I don't think he has any of those super toxic traits which probably add to the tension in those books. Brother. That's definitely my main concern. Having an irreversible falling out with my brother because of her. As it stands right now, my brother feels so unreachable, even my dad is struggling to connect with him. We're both worried this marriage is a mistake or something is going on with him that makes him feel he has to go through with it, so much so that he's unwilling to talk to us or even pause to reconsider. Commenter. Okay, I'm guessing a slightly spicy book with dragons. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. The male lead is on the darker side. His name is Zayden Rierson. I love reading, so if anyone has any other ideas, I'd like to hear about it. I can't imagine your brother taking the side of his fiancée pranking your husband. It screams obvious crush, let alone him choosing to marry her. OP. Guys, tism for the sleuthing, it's killing me not knowing what references she's made in the past because now I'm all of a sudden interested in trying to put myself in her brain. But IDK, if this book character is correct, I read the description and Zayden is brown tawny skinned. My husband has dark hair and a warm skin tone, but he's definitely not brown. But maybe it's not about the looks. I laughed when in the description it says his features are harsh and utterly perfect, as if an artist spent their lifetime carving and sculpting them, yet alone a year on his mouth. Commenter, why does your husband feel obligated to go to the wedding? OOP, he's only going to accompany me. So I'm the obligation. He made that known to my brother. I'm going at the request of my parents, grandparents, and if I'm super honest, I'm also going because I still hope my brother will come around and open up to me and be honest with me. Because throughout this whole ordeal, he hasn't been, and it just seems to me like something is wrong that he isn't sharing, something that goes beyond this incident. So in my head I'm giving him one final opportunity. Because the way things are right now, we are headed for no contact after the wedding, and I just know it will be easier for me if I feel like I did everything and have no regrets.
Despite being insulted by my partner's mother when I spoke up to protect him, I forgave. However, I was devastated when his mother manipulated him and took our wedding savings. I'm Mary, 26, and my boyfriend is Alex, 28 years old. For over 3 years now, I've been in a relationship with my partner. It's been a journey filled with highs and lows, laughter and tears, but through it all, we've remained steadfast by each other's side. He's a kind-hearted soul, gentle and introverted, with a heart of gold. We've built a bond that's rooted in understanding and mutual respect, navigating life's challenges together as a team. However, our journey has not been without its obstacles. One of the biggest challenges we face comes from within Alex's own family, particularly from his mother. She's a complex figure, let's call her Mrs. Smith. From the outside, Mrs. Smith may seem like a typical mother figure, but behind closed doors, her behavior tells a different story. Mrs. Smith exhibits emotionally abusive tendencies towards Alex. She belittles him, criticizes his every move, and manipulates him to fulfill her own needs. It's a pattern of behavior that has persisted for years, casting a shadow over their relationship and leaving Alex feeling trapped and powerless. As I've witnessed the dynamics between Alex and his mother unfold, it's become increasingly clear to me the toll that this emotional abuse takes on him. The constant barrage of negativity chips away at his self-esteem, leaving him feeling unworthy and inadequate. Yet, despite the pain it causes him, Alex yearns for his mother's love and approval, desperately seeking validation from a source that seems incapable of providing it. Mrs. Smith's troubled background serves as a backdrop to her emotionally abusive behavior towards Alex. 3 years ago, she went through a divorce that left her emotionally shattered. The dissolution of her marriage triggered a downward spiral in her mental state, exacerbating her already fragile emotional state. Unable to cope with the upheaval, Mrs. Smith's demeanor shifted, and she became increasingly bitter and resentful. Since the divorce, Mrs. Smith's daily routine has been marked by a sense of aimlessness and despair. She lacks motivation to engage in meaningful activities, often spending her days in isolation. Neglecting household chores and responsibilities, she allows the burden to fall on Alex and other family members. Her lack of contribution to the household only adds to the tension and resentment brewing within the family dynamic. In her interactions with Alex, Mrs. Smith's behavior takes on a toxic edge. She frequently belittles him, using cutting remarks to undermine his confidence and self-worth. Every accomplishment is met with criticism, every mistake magnified and exploited. Her words are like daggers, piercing through Alex's defenses and leaving him emotionally wounded. Yelling has become a common occurrence in their household, with Mrs. Smith unleashing her frustrations on Alex without restraint. Her anger knows no bounds, and she lashes out at him over the smallest of perceived slights. The verbal assaults leave Alex feeling small and powerless, trapped in a cycle of emotional abuse from which he sees no escape. Manipulation is another weapon in Mrs. Smith's arsenal, used to control and coerce Alex into meeting her needs. She plays on his guilt and sense of obligation, exploiting his desire to please her at any cost. Whether it's guilt-tripping him into running errands or emotionally blackmailing him into compliance, Mrs. Smith's manipulative tactics further entrench her power over Alex, leaving him feeling trapped and helpless. As the girlfriend of Alex, I've witnessed firsthand the profound impact of his mother's emotionally abusive behavior on him. Alex is a gentle and kind-hearted soul, but beneath his calm exterior lies a sea of emotional turmoil, wrought by years of enduring his mother's toxic treatment. The constant barrage of criticism, belittlement, and manipulation from his mother leaves him in a perpetual state of unease and distress. His anxiety manifests in various ways, from racing thoughts and difficulty concentrating to physical symptoms like chest tightness and shortness of breath. These symptoms often escalate into full-blown panic attacks, rendering him immobilized and overwhelmed by fear. Her constant criticism and manipulation chip away at his self-esteem, leaving him feeling unworthy and unlovable. He internalizes her harsh words and begins to question his own worth, doubting whether he's deserving of love and respect. Alex's mother's behavior takes a toll on his mental health, exacerbating his anxiety and depression and leaving him feeling overwhelmed and helpless. Her relentless negativity creates a toxic atmosphere in their household, making it difficult for Alex to find peace and solace in his own home. He feels like he's constantly walking on eggshells, afraid to set off his mother's anger or disappointment. Despite the pain and anguish caused by his mother's behavior, Alex continues to yearn for her love and approval, desperately seeking validation from a source that seems incapable of providing it. His desire for his mother's affection is a double-edged sword, as it leaves him vulnerable to her manipulation and control. He fears confronting her and standing up for himself, worried about the repercussions and potential backlash. I've found myself grappling with the heartbreaking reality of his situation when it comes to seeking refuge from his mother's toxic behavior. It's a question that weighs heavily on both of our minds. Can he come stay with his dad? The answer, unfortunately, is not as simple as we had hoped. Despite the desire to find sanctuary in his father's home, Alex's dad lives in a cramped one-bedroom apartment, unable to accommodate him. However, even in the face of this obstacle, there's a glimmer of hope in knowing that his father would do anything to support him. Alex's father would be willing to make the sacrifice of moving into a larger space to provide his son with the comfort and safety he so desperately needs. Yet, despite his father's potential willingness to make such a sacrifice, Alex remains paralyzed by fear at the mere thought of confronting his mother or seeking refuge elsewhere. The terror he feels towards his mother's wrath is a powerful deterrent, holding him back from taking steps towards asserting his own autonomy and seeking a better life for himself. It's a heartbreaking reality that we're both faced with, knowing that we're working tirelessly to move out and create a safe haven away from the toxicity of Alex's home environment. However, as anyone who's tried to navigate the daunting landscape of housing affordability knows, it's an uphill battle filled with financial constraints and limited options. Especially during one particularly tense visit home, I found myself unable to stay silent any longer in the face of Alex's mother's relentless barrage of criticism towards him. Fueled by anger and frustration, I couldn't help but speak up and argue back when she unleashed her harsh words upon him. I couldn't bear to see him being torn down yet again without standing up for himself. In the heat of the moment, my emotions got the best of me, and I even directed some of my frustration towards Alex, expressing my frustration at what I perceived as his weakness in standing up to his mother's abuse. I knew that if we continued to allow her toxic behavior to go unchecked, it would only serve to poison our future together. However, instead of diffusing the tension, my outburst only seemed to escalate the situation further. Alex's mother turned her fury towards him, accusing him of choosing me over her and demanding that he make a choice between us. It was a heartbreaking ultimatum to witness, knowing that Alex was caught between his loyalty to his mother and his love for me. As if that weren't enough, she didn't hesitate to hurl insults my way, mocking me for my perceived lack of education. Her words stung. Anger, frustration, and sadness coursed through me as I struggled to process what had just transpired. Unable to contain my feelings any longer, tears welled up in my eyes, threatening to spill over at any moment. I made the decision to leave. I couldn't bear to stay in that toxic environment a moment longer, surrounded by negativity and hostility. I hoped that Alex would come after me, that he would show some sign of defiance against his mother's control and choose to stand by my side. But as I walked away, my heart sank with the realization that he remained rooted in place, paralyzed by fear of his mother's wrath. He remained a prisoner of his own fears, unable to defy the hold that his mother had over him. In the aftermath of the heated confrontation and my subsequent departure, I was left grappling with a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Anger, hurt and disappointment vied for dominance within me. But amidst it all, one undeniable truth remained. I loved Alex. Despite the pain he had caused me, I couldn't shake the deep-rooted affection I felt for him. A week passed, and despite my initial resolve to stand firm in my decision, I found myself unable to resist the pull of love and compassion. I couldn't bear to see Alex suffer alone, trapped in the suffocating grip of his mother's manipulation. So, against my better judgment, I forgave him. I rationalized my decision by telling myself that love was worth fighting for, that I couldn't abandon him in his time of need. But forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. I made it clear to Alex that while I was willing to give him another chance, I wouldn't subject myself to further abuse at the hands of his mother. From that point on, we chose to meet outside of his mother's house, avoiding the toxic environment that had caused us so much pain. However, just when I thought we were making progress, another blow came crashing down. Alex made the shocking decision to take the money we had been saving for our future together and hand it over to his mother. It was a devastating betrayal, one that cut me to the core. The realization that Alex had succumbed once again to his mother's manipulation was like a dagger to my heart. I felt a wave of despair wash over me, wondering how I could have been so blind to the extent of Mrs. Smith's control over him. The money we had saved was meant to be a symbol of our commitment to each other, a tangible reminder of our dreams for the future. To see it squandered away on his mother's whims felt like a betrayal of everything we had worked so hard for. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of helplessness and despair. It was clear that Mrs. Smith's psychological manipulation knew no bounds, and I realized with a sinking feeling that I was powerless to stop it. Despite my love for Alex, I couldn't ignore the harsh reality of our situation. And while my heart ached at the thought of walking away, I knew that I couldn't continue to sacrifice my own well-being for the sake of a relationship that was built on a foundation of manipulation and deceit. So he and I broke up. 1 month later, I received a distressing call from Alex. His voice trembled with despair as he confessed that he felt utterly worthless, consumed by thoughts of despair and hopelessness. My heart broke for him as he revealed that his mother had callously betrayed him, taking all the money he had given her and running away with another man. In that moment, it became painfully clear that he needed me more than ever before. Driven by love and compassion, I made the decision to return to his side, determined to offer him the support and comfort he so desperately needed. Together, we embarked on a journey of healing, attending regular therapy sessions at the hospital to address his mental health struggles. Despite the challenges we faced, I remained steadfast in my commitment to him, serving as his rock and source of encouragement during his darkest moments. I took it upon myself to create a sense of hope and optimism for our future, painting a vivid picture of the beautiful life that awaited us once he emerged from the shadows of his past. Slowly but surely, his spirit began to stabilize, and the light of hope flickered once again in his eyes. In the midst of our shared struggles, our bond only grew stronger, forged in the fires of adversity and strengthened by our unwavering love for each other. It was during this time of turmoil and transformation that we made the decision to take the next step in our journey together. We decided to get married. Filled with a renewed sense of purpose and determination, we embarked on the exciting journey of planning our future together, eager to leave the pain and heartache of the past behind us. With each passing day, our love continued to blossom, a beacon of light guiding us towards a brighter tomorrow. And as we stood hand in hand, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew in my heart that together, we could conquer anything that came our way. Now, after being married for 10 months, I find myself pregnant with our son, a new chapter of joy and anticipation unfolding before us. However, just as we began to revel in the happiness of impending parenthood, the specter of Alex's estranged mother reappeared, casting a shadow of uncertainty over our lives once again. With tearful pleas and desperate appeals, she sought to worm her way back into our lives, leaving me feeling torn and uncertain about what course of action to take. In the midst of this turmoil, I find myself grappling with conflicting emotions. As the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on my mind, I felt compelled to speak up, to plead with my husband to reconsider the idea of letting his estranged mother back into our lives. The thought of subjecting our unborn child to the same pain and turmoil that Alex had endured in the past filled me with an overwhelming sense of dread and urgency. In a quiet moment together, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the difficult conversation that lay ahead. With a heavy heart and trembling voice, I began to express my deepest fears and concerns to my husband, laying bare the raw emotions that churned within me. Alex, I started, my voice wavering slightly, I know that your mother's sudden reappearance has stirred up a whirlwind of conflicting emotions within you. But please, I beg of you, consider the implications of allowing her back into our lives. I reached out, grasping his hand tightly in mine, seeking solace and support in his reassuring presence. Think about what she did to you in the past, I continued, my voice trembling with emotion. Do you really want to expose our child to the same kind of toxicity and negativity that you endured? Tears welled up in my eyes as I spoke, my heart aching with the weight of my words. I don't want our child to grow up in an environment filled with pain and resentment, I pleaded, desperation lacing my words. We deserve better, Alex. Our child deserves better. I searched his eyes, silently pleading for him to understand the depth of my fears and concerns. But as I gazed into his eyes, I saw the conflict raging within him, the turmoil of emotions that mirrored my own. For a long moment, there was silence between us, punctuated only by the soft sound of our breathing. And then, with a heavy sigh, Alex spoke, his voice tinged with uncertainty and hesitation. I understand your concerns, Sarah, he said softly, his gaze dropping to the floor. But she's still my mother. And despite everything that's happened, I can't shake off the feeling that I owe her another chance. My heart sank at his words, a sense of resignation settling over me like a heavy blanket. I knew that trying to convince him otherwise would be futile, that his sense of duty and obligation to his mother ran deep. Frustration and anger consumed me as I stormed out of our home, my swollen belly a heavy burden against my frame. Blocking my husband's calls, I sought solace in the company of my best friend, pouring out my grievances in a torrent of tears and frustration. Days turned into weeks, my mood swinging wildly between anger and despair as I struggled to find stability amidst the chaos. Then, one fateful day, a sharp pain tore through my abdomen, sending me doubling over in agony. Fear gripped my heart as my best friend rushed me to the hospital, the urgency of the situation propelling us forward with a sense of urgency. In the sterile confines of the hospital room, the truth of our predicament hit me like a sledgehammer. My baby just turned 8 months old, fought for life within the confines of my womb, his premature arrival a stark reminder of the fragility of life. As doctors and nurses bustled around me, their urgent voices a cacophony of chaos, I clung to a sliver of hope, praying fervently for the safety of my unborn child. Time seemed to stand still as I waited with bated breath, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me like a suffocating blanket. Then, with a cry that pierced the air like a beacon of hope, my son was born. Fragile and vulnerable, he lay cradled in the arms of the medical staff, his tiny form a testament to the miracle of life amidst adversity. In that moment, as I gazed upon the tiny bundle of joy nestled against my chest, a wave of overwhelming love washed over me, drowning out the chaos and uncertainty that had plagued me for so long. Despite the challenges that lay ahead, I knew that I would do whatever it took to protect and nurture this precious gift, my son. My reason for hope in a world fraught with uncertainty. As my husband rushed to my side, his face a mixture of worry and relief, I felt a surge of emotions wash over me. In his arms, I found solace and strength. His presence a reassuring anchor amidst the tumultuous sea of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. His embrace was a testament to the love and support that had sustained us through the darkest of times, his warm touch a balm to my weary soul. In that moment, as we held each other close, I knew that together we could weather any storm that life threw our way. With tears of joy streaming down our faces, we marveled at the tiny miracle cradled in my arms, his delicate features a poignant reminder of the preciousness of life. In his innocent gaze, I saw hope and promise for the future, a beacon of light in the darkness that had threatened to engulf us. Update. After a long and difficult conversation, my husband and I made the tough decision to place my mother-in-law in a nursing home. It wasn't an easy choice, but we knew it was necessary for her well-being and our own peace of mind. However, shortly after she was admitted, we received news that she had fled from the facility. Learning that she had run away once again filled me with a sense of dread and anxiety. Despite our best efforts to provide her with the care she needed, it seemed that she was determined to resist any form of confinement. Her refusal to stay in the nursing home left us feeling helpless and uncertain about what to do next. As I shared these concerns with my husband, I couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom that hung over us. The thought of her returning and causing havoc once more weighed heavily on my mind, casting a shadow of fear and uncertainty over our lives. Despite our attempts to move forward and create a sense of stability for our family, the specter of my mother-in-law's actions continued to haunt us, a constant reminder of the challenges we faced in caring for her and protecting our own well-being. In the midst of this uncertainty, I found myself grappling with conflicting emotions, torn between my sense of duty towards my husband's mother and the need to prioritize the safety and happiness of our own family. It was a difficult balancing act, one that left me feeling exhausted and overwhelmed. As we navigated this new chapter in our lives, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held in store for us. Would my mother-in-law return, disrupting our lives once again? Or would we finally find a sense of peace and stability, free from the turmoil that had plagued us for so long? Only time would tell, but for now, all we could do was wait and hope for the best, clinging to the belief that somehow, we would find a way to overcome whatever challenges lay ahead.
My parents tried to give my inheritance to their favorite daughter, but my grandparents had a surprising twist in store. Male 28-year-old comes from a family with a convoluted and long history of favoritism. My younger sister Amy, 25, has always been preferred by my parents, especially Dad, over me. Starting in our childhood, this partiality only got worse as we grew up. Amy was the golden child from my earliest memories. Our parents threw her an elaborate birthday party including professional face painters, a bouncy castle, and a petting zoo when I was 5 and she was 2. I had a store-bought cake and a little family supper for my birthday that same year. This helped to define the tone for years to come. The differences became clearer as we aged. Amy always received the newest toys, the greatest clothes and most attention. I recall saving months of allowance for a new bike when I was 10 years old. Amy wanted one too, hence she had a fit when she saw it. Rather of educating her about waiting or saving, my parents went right out and got her an even nicer bike than mine. Another arena where the bias was evident was school. Amy's parents attended all of her school functions, while they usually missed mine. I took front stage in the school play in 4th grade. I practiced for weeks, driven by great enthusiasm. My parents arrived an hour late on the night of the play, therefore missing my major scene. They were consoling Amy after she complained of stomachache. She was good later on, they had simply lost count of time playing with her. Regarding academics, nothing I ever appeared to do seemed sufficient. I joined the math club, often received straight A's in middle school, and even took first place in a regional science fair. Though my parents hardly noticed these successes, they gave Amy a celebratory dinner and purchased her a new phone as encouragement to keep getting better when she scored a B+ on one test in her weakest subject. In particular, high school was difficult. With an eye toward their approval, I put myself into whatever activity I could. Along with keeping a 4.0 GPA, I was editor of the school newspaper, debate team captain. Amy coasted through school, hardly keeping a C average, and spent much of her time hanging out with friends. I was chosen from our university as one of 2 junior year applicants to participate in a famous summer program at Harvard. It was such an honor, and I felt great. My dad grumbled and moved the topic to Amy's forthcoming dancing performance when I told the news over supper. At least my mother remarked, "That's nice," but she moved on fast. My parents couldn't bring me to the airport on the night Amy's concert fell on the same day I was leaving Harvard, as they wanted to see Amy perform. I asked the parents of a friend for a ride. Another agonizing experience was the college application process. I worked months on improving my essays, engaged in extracurricular activities, and SAT preparation. Several elite colleges accepted me, and I was given a sizable scholarship to my ideal college. When I told my parents about this at supper, their reaction was barely passable. "That's good, but don't let it run to your head. College isn't everything," my dad advised. "Just remember about us when you're off becoming a big shot," my mother said. On the other hand, my parents were quite understanding when Amy barely passed high school and chose not to attend college. They admired her for knowing herself and for defying social expectations. Something they never done for me, they even paid for her a car as a graduation gift. Emotionally, this persistent favoritism suffered me greatly. Over my teens and early 20s, I battled anxiety and despair. Beginning therapy in college, I came to realize that my parents' actions were not my fault. Years of effort were needed to develop my self-esteem and learn to validate myself rather than depending on my parents' approval. My immediate family did not help me, yet I still managed to lead a decent life. By the time I finished from college with honors, I had a decent job in finance, and even purchased my own house by 27 years old. Though my parents aren't, I'm glad of what I've accomplished. Here then, is where the current drama begins. On Dad's side, my grandfather died not too long ago. He left a sizable estate and was a successful businessman who started from nothing. In his will, he split his possessions equally among his grandchildren, including me, Amy, and our cousins, as well as his children, Dad and his siblings. My portion of the bequest was significant, roughly $500,000. It would have let me invest in my future, pay off my education loans, and perhaps even launch my own company someday. This unanticipated windfall and the chances it could present made me happy. When the will was read, though, my parents clearly became agitated. Later, they drew me aside and said they felt it was unjust I received an equal portion. Amy, who lives in our parents' basement and works part-time at a coffee shop, said she needed the money more since she was suffering. Though stunned, I attempted to keep cool. I clarified that Grandpa made this decision. They had no say on how he decided. They insisted I should act morally and give Amy my fair part. They became enraged when I turned down and began guilt-tripping me, calling me unappreciative and selfish. Every incident my dad could recall where they had helped me came under discussion. Though I worked part-time to help with finances, he emphasized paying for my medically necessary braces, buying me school supplies, the bare minimum, and allowing me reside at home during college. He conveniently forgot about the car they bought Amy, the many shopping sprees, and the fact they still support her at 2025. The matter got rapidly more serious. Acting as the will's executor, my dad chose to handle things himself. Along with her own inheritance, he declared he would be interpretation Grandpa's intentions and give Amy my whole part. He said Grandpa would have wished if he had known our unique situation. I was broken. This was not only obviously illegal but also a terrible reminder of how little my parents thought of me. Pointing that Grandpa had always treated all his grandchildren equally and that he was aware of our circumstances, I tried to reason with them. Then my mother accused me of speaking ill of the deceased by implying Grandpa would have preferred anything else than what my dad was advocating. I mentioned certain memories of Grandpa pushing my academic and career goals, but my parents brushed off these as misinterpretation. They said Grandpa wanted to make sure Amy was taken care of and had privately voiced worry about her future. They had no response when I asked why he hadn't simply penned the will that way then. Amy, for her part, was awkward about the circumstances but did not voice criticism of our parents. She merely shrugged and said, "Mom and Dad know best." When I tried to chat to her alone, she obviously wasn't going to be much help. Feeling misled and wounded, I asked Grandpa's widow, my paternal grandma, for guidance. Hearing what was happening, she became enraged. She informed me that my parents had no authority to alter the will and that this was exactly not what Grandpa had planned. Grandma sent some material that clarifies the matter. Several years ago, apparently, my parents asked Grandpa to give everything to Amy in his will. Grandpa had steadfastly objected, saying he thought all of his grandchildren should be treated equally. He had even included a stipulation in his will declaring that anyone challenging the equitable distribution would lose their portion. Equipped with this knowledge, I challenged my parents. Grandma's disclosure of their earlier attempt to affect the will startled them. Saying they were only looking out Amy's future helped my dad try to defend it, but I could see the guilt on their faces. Grandmother acted right away. She got in touch with her will's other executors and attorney. She also got in touch with my dad's siblings, who shared her equally strong indignation at what he was attempting. Taken together, they stopped my dad's scheme and guaranteed that the will would be carried out as stated. Though they are unhappy with me, my parents were obliged to back off. They argued I should have handled this in-house instead of involving others and accused me of turning the family against me. My mother sobbed over how I had split the family and deceived them. I said I had never expected anything from them anyway, when my dad threatened to cut me out of their will totally. Now, should I accept the inheritance, they are threatening to break off all communication. My dad even went so far as to suggest that I would not be welcome in their house should I inherit it. In a particularly low blow, my mother remarked that my acceptance of the money reveals that I never truly loved them and was merely ready to profit from their passing. The matter splits the extended family. A few of my cousins are encouraging since they understand the long-standing favoritism and value me for advocating myself. Others believe I should have yielded in order to preserve peace since family harmony comes first over financial considerations. Although my dad's siblings are definitely on my side, this has strained their relationship as well as my parents. Amy finds herself enmeshed in all this. She confided in me privately that although she feels bad and didn't ask for this, she is not ready to challenge our parents. She's been trained her whole life to depend on them and seek their praise, hence I don't blame her totally. Still, a part of me longs she would help me just once. This circumstance has brought out a lot of past suffering and bitterness. I find myself remembering all the times I was passed over or discounted in favor of Amy, the birthday celebrations I missed, the school functions my parents missed, the successes that went unreported. This one occurrence seems to be bringing to a head a lifetime of unfairness. Though the whole affair has caused a great divide in the family, I am keeping my ground and want to take my inheritance as Grandpa meant. My parents hardly talk to me, and family get-togethers have grown awkward. I missed our monthly family meal last week for the first time ever since I could stand the cold shoulders and accusing glares. Though there is turmoil, a tiny bit of me feels empowered. I'm confronting the unfair treatment by my parents for the first time in my life. I'm declaring my value and refuse to be written off. It's both terrible and freeing at once. Though I think I'm in the right here, the family drama is draining me. Something I hadn't experienced since college, I have started having anxiety attacks once more. To assist handle all this stress, I'm thinking about returning to therapy. Am I the one who should have refused to comply with my parents' expectations and accepted my inheritance? Should I have simply handed Amy the money to maintain peace? Although I'm bored of being the family scapegoat, I also fear losing my family totally. Any guidance or viewpoint would be much valued. Update. Since my first post 6 months ago, a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone for their support and guidance. It truly kept me strong during trying circumstances. Let me start with the legal aspect of things. Many of you advised, and I did see my own attorney. He verified that I had every right to inherit and that what my dad attempted was in fact illegal. He helped me record everything and ready to act legally should needed. Fortunately, things did not transpire as such. Along with my dad's siblings, my grandma and her attorney worked out matters without involving court. I got my whole fortune and the will was carried out exactly as intended. Because of his will manipulation attempts, my dad was removed as an executor. This was a somewhat demanding process spanning several weeks. My parents threatened litigation, there were tense meetings and furious phone calls, but ultimately the law was unambiguous and they had to back off. Still ongoing though, the family fallout has been noteworthy. At first, my parents doubled down on their viewpoint. They charged me with being avaricious and neglectful of my sister. They also sought to mobilize other family members against me, disseminating allegations that I had somehow coerced Grandpa into giving me money. Luckily, most of the family saw through their trickery. About 1 month following the will's acceptance, there was one really unpleasant occurrence at a family gathering. When my parents showed there unannounced, my aunt was hosting and hadn't asked them to come. They started a scene. Starting to shout about how I had taken from Amy and corrupted Grandma against her, my dad became saying I had ruined all these wonderful memories. My mother flung an old photo album squarely at my feet. It was awkward and terrible. It took several relatives to cool things down and persuade my parents to leave. Bless her heart, my grandmother turned out to be my most powerful supporter over all of this. She related tales of how my grandfather had always been pleased of my achievements and how he especially wanted to make sure all his grandchildren had equal chances. She even said Grandpa had maintained a scrapbook of my accomplishments, newspaper clippings of academic honors, copies of my college acceptance letters, And even the program from that university play my parents had been late for. This insight was sad as well as wonderful. Grandma also volunteered to straighten the records with the wider family. She organized a family gathering excluding my parents, laying out the entire history of my parents' partiality, including events I had long forgotten or never ever heard about. Having someone at last recognize the unfairness I had gone through for years was vindicating, but it also reopened old scars. About my sister Amy, she at last found her voice in all this. She came to me personally and apologized for not sticking up for me earlier after some soul-searching and several long talks with our grandmother. She said she thought our parents' preference was improper, but she had been too terrified to confront it. We discussed our childhood and how it influenced both of us in great length and emotional intensity. Amy admitted that being the favorite child wasn't as wonderful as it seemed. She never learned how to stand on her 2 feet and felt great pressure to live up to our parents' expectations. She told tales of times she yearned to accomplish things on her own, but our parents would swoop in and handle everything for her, therefore depriving her of the opportunity to develop and learn from her mistakes. For our relationship, this talk marked a sea change. We began to mend the sibling link our parents' partiality had broken. Just the two of us have been routinely meeting for coffee to discuss and encourage one another through this family crisis. Declaring that she was going to pay for college with her inheritance astonished everyone. She claimed seeing me stand up for myself motivated her to start managing her own life. Once she decided what she wanted to study, she registered in a nearby community college, first intending to transfer to a 4-year university. Our parents let out startled gasps. They knew, I believe, that their babying had not done Amy any favors. The response of my parents to all this has been diverse and changing. They first attacked both of us angrily. They tried to guilt Amy into quitting college to help the family since they said I turned her against them. They changed strategy when that proved ineffective. After several protracted talks with my grandmother and seeing Amy's great transformation, my mother began to recognize how damaging their actions had been. She has made some hesitant moves toward reconciliation, even beginning therapy to address her problems. She got in touch to apologies, owning that she had been unfair and requesting a chance to right things. It's a slow process, and while I'm gently hopeful, I'm also keeping strong limits. Sadly, my dad has been less likely to own any mistakes. Still furious, he feels as though he is the victim in all this. He has been chilly toward Amy since she chose to go college and hardly speaks to me. He has tried a few times to control us, threatening to sell our childhood house should we fail to come to our senses or forgiving us should we realize we were wrong. Although we are both standing strong, it hurts to see him distance both of his children like this. The dynamics among the extended family have changed dramatically. I now live closer to my dad's siblings, who have been quite helpful, and my grandmother. Having heard from my aunts and uncles about handling my dad's challenging conduct over the years, it has lessened my loneliness in this fight. Deeper bonds with some of my cousins who stood by me have also developed. Starting a monthly cousin meal allows us to all catch up free from the drama of the older generations. For myself, I have been making sensible use of my inheritance. Having paid off my college loans, I now feel an amazing degree of financial freedom. Working with a financial advisor, I have assembled a varied investment portfolio. I have also set aside some funds to maybe launch my own company some years forward. Opening a community center with reasonably priced mental health treatments and financial literacy seminars is something I'm investigating. But for me, buying therapy for myself and volunteering to do the same for Amy has been the most significant application of the money. Both of us are learning to set reasonable limits with our parents and are working on healing from our childhood events. Though it's a long road, I already feel as though I'm developing in knowledge and ability to overcome emotional neglect and long-term partiality. This whole process has brought some surprising good improvements into my life. I now know a great deal about establishing limits and defending myself. Though I know I did the right thing, it hasn't been easy and there are still difficult days. I feel good about myself for resisting guilt and pressure. Among the most unexpected results has been a change in my work path. Dealing with all this family conflict and undergoing therapy has helped me to see my own passion about supporting people who, dealing with all this family dysfunction and doing therapy has helped me to see how driven I am about supporting others who have gone through same family dynamics. Currently thinking about returning to school to specialize in adult children of emotionally immature parents and work as a family therapist. I have also been helping youngsters from challenging family homes at a nearby youth facility. Being able to offer the kind of encouragement and support I wish I had had as a youngster is immensely satisfying. I'm even considering creating a scholarship fund for children from same circumstances using some of my inheritance. My contact with Amy has kept getting better. Once a month, we have a siblings day when we do something entertaining, just the two of us. Our hiking and picnic last month was the most laid back and connected we had felt since we were small children. Without our parents' influence, we are gently reconstructing our connection on our own terms. Regarding my parents, things remain tricky. Our relationship has been trying to be rebuilt by my mom. She has been routinely attending therapy and has even begun to see some of the damage her favoritism brought about. We have had a few one-on-one lunches when we have had some honest, though challenging talks regarding our past and forward direction. Though it's not flawless, improvement is evident. My dad still objects to change though. He still says he done nothing illegal and that Amy and I should be appreciative. He refuses to be in the same room with me, hence he missed several family functions. Though it hurts, I am trying to let go of my need to compel him to see things differently or control his reactions. For both Amy and me, Grandma now serves as a rock. She has been sharing additional tales about our grandfather and his pride of us for advocating for ourselves. She always supports justice and understanding, thus she has been a fantastic mediator in family problems. The whole process has imparted a lot of lessons about the actual meaning of family. I've come to see that occasionally the family you select might be more encouraging than the one you were raised in. Along with developing a close-knit circle of friends who have been quite helpful along this journey, I have grown closer to my aunts, uncles, and cousins who stood by me. Setting limits and practicing self-care have also become more crucial to me. I'm growing better at saying no to circumstances that compromise my mental health, and I no longer feel bad about giving my personal well-being top priority. I was so preoccupied with trying to achieve my parents' favor that I had always put off investigating new interests and hobbies. To those in same circumstances, I would wish to advise not let someone make you feel bad about getting what is rightly yours. Even if it generates controversy, it's reasonable to defend yourself. Though family dynamics might be complex, you are deserving of fair treatment. Remember, you never have too late to begin developing the life you are due. See a therapist if necessary. Surround yourself with encouraging people. And don't hesitate to establish limits. Who you are personally defines your value, not how your family treats you. I want to thank each of you once more for your suggestions and encouragement. It meant more than what you would have known during a really trying period. Although the road has not been simple, I am excited about the future and confident in self-assurance I have not experienced in years. Where this new chapter of my life will lead excites me, and I am resolved to stop the pattern of favoritism and build better relationships in my own future family. Regarding my parents, things remain tricky. Our relationship has been trying to be rebuilt by my mom. She has been routinely attending therapy and has even begun to see some of the damage her favoritism brought about. We have had a few one-on-one lunches when we have had some honest, though challenging talks regarding our past and forward direction. Though it's not flawless, improvement is evident. My dad still objects to change though. He still says he done nothing illegal and that Amy and I should be appreciative. He refuses to be in the same room with me, hence he missed several family functions. Though it hurts, I am trying to let go of my need to compel him to see things differently or control his reactions. For both Amy and me, Grandma now serves as a rock. She has been sharing additional tales about our grandfather and his pride of us for advocating for ourselves. She always supports justice and understanding, thus she has been a fantastic mediator in family problems. The whole process has imparted a lot of lessons about the actual meaning of family. I've come to see that occasionally the family you select might be more encouraging than the one you were raised in. Along with developing a close-knit circle of friends who have been quite helpful along this journey, I have grown closer to my aunts, uncles, and cousins who stood by me. Setting limits and practicing self-care have also become more crucial to me. I'm growing better at saying no to circumstances that compromise my mental health, and I no longer feel bad about giving my personal well-being top priority. I was so preoccupied with trying to achieve my parents' favor that I had always put off investigating new interests and hobbies. To those in same circumstances, I would wish to advise not let someone make you feel bad about getting what is rightly yours. Even if it generates controversy, it's reasonable to defend yourself. Though family dynamics might be complex, you are deserving of fair treatment. Remember, you never have too late to begin developing the life you are due. See a therapist if necessary. Surround yourself with encouraging people. And don't hesitate to establish limits. Who you are personally defines your value, not how your family treats you. I want to thank each of you once more for your suggestions and encouragement. It meant more than what you would have known during a really trying period. Although the road has not been simple, I am excited about the future and confident in self-assurance I have not experienced in years. Where this new chapter of my life will lead excites me, and I am resolved to stop the pattern of favoritism and build better relationships in my own future family. Arrogant boss fires expert, leading to £800K project disaster. Sweet revenge unfolds, but the story ends in tragedy. Who am I? Do you know? It backfires on an egotistical manager when a $800,000 project goes off course because he sacked an invaluable staff member. First of all, this never happened to me. I was with the individual when they got a call concerning this problem. Then he walked me through it all. He is not on Reddit, hence I am sharing it. It is valuable. Every name has been modified to guard corporate and personal identities. The plot depends much on listed structures. There is a mechanism in place in the UK for maintaining historic and significant constructions. A building deemed historically significant is referred to as a listed building. The guidelines for its evolution, preservation, and enhancement are rather rigorous. I have to be obscure about the labor involved. Else, it would be too simple to name the people engaged. David, a buddy of mine, is quite specialized in a very small field of building. Using a very ancient building technique not used for several millennia, he fixes and renovates buildings. His whole output focuses on listed buildings and conservation projects. Work needed on a Grade 1 listed property. ACC Limited, the major contractor, was handling the building generally. There is quite specific study on one aspect. The architect provided a list of suitable candidates as the contractor management knew no one who had done it. The contractors selected my friend since he was most available early on. 5 days into the project, the major contractor, ACC Limited, arrived on site. David's words? He was a boisterous gobshite throwing his weight about. David ignored him while he was merely working. One of his carpenters was directed by the boisterous gobshite to make him coffee. The carpenter vanished. The noisy gobshite kept prowling and grumbling about delays costing him a lot of money. The boisterous gobshite asked my pal a question 15 minutes after the carpenter vanished. "Where is that chippy with my coffee?" asked a noisy gobshite. Chippy =carpenter. Chippy =carpenter. "David, I'm not clear." "Go and find out," a noisy gobshite says. "David, I'm only here for this job," gesturing at the walls. "I work for ACC Limited, not for you." Noisy gobshite. "It makes no difference if you're an employee or a subcontractor. You still are working for me. Now go and locate my coffee." David. "First of all, I find it offensive to be spoken to like manners. Second, my contract with you is to do these walls, nothing else. I most definitely am not a gopher." Noisy gobshite. "Oh, do you not value being spoken to in such a manner? For which subcontractor do you now work?" David. "None. I run my business alone, just me." Noisy gobshite. "A day laborer. And you have the guts to address me in such a manner? Do you know my name?" David. "Sure." "Well, you're fired," a noisy gobshite says. "Get out of the premises right away." David says, "Okay. Just get off the site," says a noisy gobshite. David grabbed out his phone and started recording. David. "Okay, I'll leave. Just want evidence you advised me to leave." Grabbing David's hand containing the phone, a noisy gobshite yelled into the phone, "Get off the site, you idiot," a noisy gobshite says. "You're let off. I'll have you thrown out if you're still here in 10 minutes. David. "Cool, not problematic." He took up his gear and left. The contractor's site manager passed him, ironically with a coffee for the boss, as he was leaving and smiled. Site manager. "Dave, you're leaving early? Bloody part-time kidding." David. "No, your boss just sacked me. We have signed out our contract. Apologies, friend." The site manager said, No, allow me to arrange things here. Please wait, kindly." David left the site. Knowing something the boisterous gobshite lacked, the site manager was losing his head. In the UK, just 7 persons are certified to handle the task. Every one of them had a waiting list. David had been the only one accessible. 12 missed calls by the time he arrived home. That was Thursday, 2 working days absent so far. He claimed he would go back only if he was paid for the extra days and personally apologized to the employer. I met my friend as he was answering a call from the site manager, stating the boss apologies but is out of the country, so cannot apologize personally. David also informed me he warned the other specialist over the phone, but they had all been contacted on Friday asking to be assigned work. Nobody picked up the work. They were all booked full. To warn him, David also called the architect. Under such circumstances, some dishonest builders attempt to falsify the work and bodge the job. David is going to keep his guns, money for all missing days plus a face-to-face apologies. He is positive he will grasp it. I mentioned I would pay anything to see the in-person apologies. Update 1. The site manager called to inform David he was advised by the noisy gobshite to threaten legal action should David fail to complete his work. The site manager became really ashamed and apologetic. David reminded him he left and had documentation proving he was let go. The site manager called once more to inform the noisy gobshite will be personally apologizing on Friday. Could David begin tomorrow? David said no. Following the legal action threat, the criteria are different. Before work starts, a face-to-face apology. Additional compensation for lost days. Paying the whole contract value up front before work starts. All of this has to happen on Thursday. He can start today and still expect to finish before his next reservation. Should he work weekends as well, he has just enough time. I questioned him about why he isn't charging the man who is such a wanker a hefty extra fee. He remarked it's not the done thing to take advantage of businesses under time constraints, it looks bad. One of my pals apparently is a guy from the 18th century. Edit. When David mentioned just 7 others do this work, I misinterpreted him. He intended 7 different companies distinct from his own. Since they are small companies, he argues it is most likely just about 20 persons capable of doing it. Still a limited amount, although not as humorally tiny as 7. I apologize for misled all of you regarding the count. Update 2, sadly, an apology appears unlikely. David has found that the site manager was sacked for not alerting the noisy gobshite of the circumstances earlier. David told the operations director for ACC Limited, the second noisy gobshite, that he would not be returning to the position, so an apology is not needed. Apologizing for everything, the operations director promised to very liberally renegotiate the money. David informed him he had only thought about returning to the position as a personal courtesy to the original site manager. He feels no need to go back as he is not there. The operations director indicated he will contact David but omitted any explanation. Why he didn't say, "Give him his job back," or "I won't come back," I wondered. David remarked the boisterous gobshite is too weak and petty to be guided by a craftsman. It will have to be the concept of the company for the site manager returning. They won't bring him back if I order them to. David thinks it's difficult to obtain a job at 61 since the site manager is excellent at his work but only 4 years from retirement. I have decided that David appeals to me even more than 3 days before. 3 updates. It is 2 in the morning here. We just came out of the bar. David answered a call from the dismissed site manager while we were out. David reported the circumstances to the architect this afternoon. The architect got in touch with the terminated site manager to let him know about a company needing a site manager. Just before 9 p.m., the dismissed site manager called David. I had to sit through the one-sided phone call. I had to have looked like I had a house full of sparrows, childishly thrilled. Then David filled in for me. The site manager rang to thank him and find out his preferred drinks so he might bring him a bottle. He is seeing them on Friday even though he does not yet have the new job. The architect is hopeful since apparently his advice has some weight. David first rejected. David, I didn't not get you a job. The architect done. Site manager. But you told the architect I had been sacked because of you, therefore you set all this in motion. I never have to deal with that annoying pillock ever once again. David left no clear identification for the irritable pillock. We will have to conjecture. David mentioned his drink is Cardhu Gold Reserve. He declared he would only take a bottle if, A, the site manager lands the new position. B, should the site manager visit and sip the Cardhu with David. The whiskey consumption does not seem to include the attractive scribe who painstakingly and time-consumingly skillfully recorded this narrative down on Reddit. David elegantly said, "Piss off, knobhead, you can get your own drink." Except that nobody gets to see the tosspot noisy gobshite eat crow when he has to apologize. All excellent news ideally. I had great anticipation about that. David and the sacked site manager know each other outside of the office. Though 2 separate clubs, they are members of charitable organizations in the same location and cooperate extensively. David is Roundtable, whereas the site manager belongs to the Rotary Club. Though you never know, I doubt he is a knight. David was contacted by the operations director of ACC Limited to propose that they kindly renegotiate the money by bringing the site manager back. They have missed the boat, David says. He cannot finish the work on his own before beginning his next employment. Should all go without a hitch, there is an absolute minimum of 11 days labor left. David's next employment begins on November 4th. Assuming he works weekends, there are 10 days left. Last minute. I wish I could be a fly on the wall when the noisy gobshite is informed. Many people often ask, what does David do? If I said what it was, it would be quite identifying. I could as well tell you his actual name and address. Apologize. There are extremely few of them since it takes 5 years to become just competent and at least 9 years to be a master artisan. At least one master present is needed for the jobs done. Update 4, bad news. The site manager who was sacked did not land the other position. He met the new company. But they are not extending an invitation to him. The explanations are not obvious. David is seeing him Sunday to go over it. Though David is not at blame, I can sense he feels guilty about it. The site manager claims he will act regarding unjust firing. Though I imagine this would be a win-win-win, I suppose life isn't like that. News about the sacked site manager. The current state of affairs is not as dire as first assumed. We misinterpreted what transpired on Friday. David chatted with him yesterday. That aspect is accurate. The employer he visited on Friday is not hiring him in the usual manner. On a distribution center build, they have, however, presented him with a fixed-term contract spanning 18 months. Though not ideal, on the plus side it pays somewhat more than ACC. Though just 18 months, it is better than nothing. Should another project surface, the new business also has the option to extend the contract. David has heard that someone Bulgarian is visiting to cover for the work. David was grinning when he informed me. He believes he understands exactly what will happen. Some 19th century Sophian structures feature a comparable but different method that was used. David believes the man will apply such an approach. Though two extremely crucial elements are different, it looks comparable. David has opted to hold off. David is going to advise the client and the planning department to verify the two components. He intends to allow the Bulgarian to finish the job and get paid. The Bulgarian will have used the incorrect tools unless he is familiar with the English approach from the 17th century. It would mean pulling it apart and beginning over. They treat this kind of work quite rigorously. Though I hardly desire this, I truly hope this comes true. I'm a minor dude. More info. Many people are wondering when David would find out whether the Bulgarian performed the work as expected. Given that there are few vendors of one of the materials, David might know really quickly. Should the Bulgarian get in touch, David will be informed. David said, "It's a tiny incestuous part of the industry, and they gossip like old women." Correction. Like older women, we all gossip. David is leaving it alone till told the work is done and the Bulgarian is paid if he does not visit there. He wants not to jeopardize the man's money. David said, "I don't want the Bulgarian to drag his arse over here and go home empty-handed just because I can't wait to drop silly bollocks. The man has a living to support him. I'm going to wait. Silly bollocks is the same person as noisy gobshite just in case of uncertainty. Unless he works weekends, the Bulgarian should finish his job in 3 weeks. David will know when the work is done as he knows several people at ACC head office and several on site. I must thus wait on my hands for 3 to 4 weeks and appear to be a non-excited 7-year-old girl not complaining about Christmas approaching." Update 5. According to David, the Bulgarian got right to it and began working. Materials have been delivered, but from an ordinary building supplier. Though they sell it in Bulgaria, the items he requires for the work are too heavy for him to carry with him. He hasn't asked for it from the UK provider. 3, but only one has enough for this work since David brought it in for her. He is therefore not using the correct materials unless he is arriving by road and ferry. Though he was not bothered by raucous gobshite, David would not let it go unrecorded. He is a purist in terms of historical accuracy and truly enjoys maintaining all the structures he works on. I therefore have to hold my water for 3 to 4 weeks. David claims he might finish earlier if he uses more contemporary materials. If you stay in the 17th century, 3 weeks is the period. About this work, I have become such a weirdo. David knew I was after information after I phoned him earlier under cover of pretext. "Do you want me to fit a body cam so you can watch and hear everything as it happens?" David asked me. I answered, "That would be great if it would not be too much trouble and you could link me into your phone calls." Laughing, David said, "You knob cheese, is it okay if I cover the lens when I'm shagging my wife?" Personal Ollie, I don't do those two things at the same time, but whatever floats your boat, I said. David, you are telling me you do them separately. Me? Right after she washed all the garbage off the sheets after doing you. A few of us are finicky. David said, "Piss off, you're an uptight clean freak." Hangs. Not farewell, not see you shortly. English behavior is not what it once was. Though I realize it doesn't look like it, really I do have a life. I never would have thought I would be typing Update 6 when I originally started working on this. Update 6 Many news stories. 2 weeks ago the Bulgarian completed his work and returned home. Those who met Stefan the Bulgarian said he was a decent man and a really diligent worker. He worked weekends and 12-hour days to help to offset the expenses of living in the UK. David is glad he waited until Stefan paid before he reported the work, knowing what he discovered about Stefan. David already felt rather certain Stefan was not performing as required. None of the 3 companies he checked, the sole UK suppliers of the most unusual substance involved in the job, Said they had an order for the site. Stefan might have imported it, of course, but nobody on site had seen an international material order. As scheduled, David thus made calls to the client, the architect, the local authority planning department, and Historic England. He waited for them to investigate after outlining his worries in the simplest, least invasive manner possible. Though it just took a few days, I can really say that I have never been that nervous or committed in anything unrelated to my pissing business. The architect produced the first report on incorrect materials and technique applied. Not the English one demanded, he had applied a Bulgarian technique from the 19th century rather than the 17th. The architect was really agitated. David Avid stated this phone call was blue, but he had never heard the architect using foul words before. The architect apparently termed the boisterous gobshite, ignorant cockwomble. David defined a womble for me. I knew nothing. Approach is welcome. Not wanting people to believe this was anything to do with him, the architect said he was going to get in touch with the local authorities. Most of the remainder came to David's second or third hand. He knows some of the staff from ACC. I wanted to know whether it was challenging to get them to tell him anything. He mentioned they lacked the quick adequate phone pickup ability. The location was visited and the work examined by the local government planning officials. They informed the contractor that the work had to be cleared and corrected since it was totally improper. Then it became fascinating. Looking about the property, the inspectors discovered a problem. It would be too simple to pinpoint the buildings involved, hence I cannot be exact about this. The builder had wrecked some of the structure. Though it was not very significant, there was an internal feature included into the roof construction. Although they were not let to, they removed it and replaced it with a far superior modern support. The project manager, the new site manager, or staff member neither understood the significance. Who ordered it to be replaced with a cheap, quick alternative rather than the slow, expensive, rebuilt option? Of course, it was noisy gobshite. Destroying anything on this kind of property is illegal, jail sentence type of crime. It's a huge fine even if they avoid jail. Everyone in that company is thus pointing fingers at one another and claiming no accountability right now. According to Noisy Gobshite, he did not direct the internal roof structural components to be removed. The project manager has email proving he did. The client asked all of the contractor's employees off the site on Tuesday, the 19th. They are currently looking over everything. They're most definitely firing the contractor. They have written guidelines for bids from fresh contractors. They will also sue the contractor for the expenses of undoing and fixing all they have done improperly. The architect's projection came at £800,000. The local government planning department wrote to the contractor detailing their mistakes and alerting them of their intentions for inspection and the likelihood of prosecution. On the day the letter arrived, Noisy Gobshite vanished to the lawyers, claims the staff. Within an hour, David received 3 calls from 3 separate ACC phones as word of the letter spread around the workforce. Now we are awaiting a few things. 1. The client's checkup. Should that prove ACC has damaged the site, the client is entitled to terminate the contractor. ACC has a huge repair debt and does not get paid. 2. Local authority inspections conducted by conservationists. Should they have destroyed elements of the property, the local government will punish ACC as a company and the individual responsible. David is rather disappointed since it is impossible to rebuild the internal framework lost. That was sitting there performing its job for 400 years until that gist stain enters the picture, he said. It goes then, and that is it, never again. He comes across as really depressed. I'm guessing Noisy Gobshite is yearning he had his own coffee that day last month. Edit, the letter to ACC, not their actual name, did not threaten a prosecution. It simply made them aware of the intention of the planning department to send a professional to check the construction and, more especially, the changed area. Apparently, should prosecution take place, it takes eternity. My real apologies for misleading all of you. Like everyone else, I was overly eager to grab my pitchfork and start believing the worst. Wishful thinking mixed with Chinese whispers meant that the story was far more serious and advanced by the time it reached David. Though it's more likely to be in 6 months than in 6 days, Noisy Gobshite may well be prosecuted. Since I started, that represents the second correction. I promise to try to be a little more deliberate on next revisions. My error, not David's. David cautioned me that not everything that comes in your ears has to flow directly out of your tongue. You're very eager to feed the masses. Although they might believe you're currently farting rainbows, if you make a bollocks of the data, this won't last. Like always, he is correct. As uncomfortably customary. Information asked. A few have inquired about the fate of the sacked original site manager, but I wasn't sure until now. We met in the pub, David, the site manager, 2 others also. Subject to fidelity insurance checks, he most certainly has the new job. His starting date is February 9th. ACC paid him off in place of notice. Firing is done according to convention. They paid him just over 3.5 months' wages in one lump as his contract provided 3 months' notice and he was due 12 holiday/6/vacation days. He also gets to retain the car till March. I was shaking like a dog when he fired me, he added, but the wife reminded me that I could take my pension early and how much I hate that company, especially that dodgy pillage. I stopped worrying when the architect contacted me about the distribution center job. He started the new work on a somewhat better pay after landing it. The main drawback is that the employment is just guaranteed for 18 months. Although it's not certain, there's a great chance the organization will retain him following that if they have work. He first intended to bring Noisy Gobshite to an industrial tribunal for unjust dismissal. Now he won't since he won't suffer financially. Obviously, I'm glad I'm not losing money, he remarked, but I was looking forward to beating that Watson in court. He is building a better sleigh and several reindeer with the additional time right now. Certainly, a sleigh. It's on the rear of a truck. Father Christmas is on the sleigh performing Christmas carols at window-rattling volume, gathering money for charity while his company strolls the area decked as elves and snowmen. I have oftentimes been pulled into it. He brought David the promised whiskey. David advised he shouldn't, but the site manager remarked, "Why, Yorkshire men keep their word, even to a shower of soft shandy-sipping southerners like Ulan. Besides, I'm not risking breaking this lucky streak." Even the alcohol came at half price. Simultaneously pointing at him, David and I said, "A real Yorkshireman." For the uninitiated, Yorkshire residents are known for two things: highly straightforward communication and financial restraint. We left the pub after ridiculing him for implying that I was a southerner and headed to the garage of the site manager so we could sip the whiskey and appreciate his sleigh building work. Would they send me some freebies if I told you all how great Cardhu Gold Reserve tastes? Born close to Carnarvon, Saeeglf, I'm Welsh and am sobbing in Bith, hence you have most likely seen some awful grammar. I'm full of whiskey, so right now I'm debating. It is past my bedtime. 1 a.m. Bye for now. Update 7. I believe there might be some karmic justice en route. Interviews under control have been conducted with Noisy Gobshite. It indicates they are ready for the possibility rather than that they are absolutely suing him. They will also do so with the sacked site manager next week. They also followed the same process with the project manager. The site manager is sure he has nothing to concern about. He was sacked, hence the decision was taken to remove the pieces of roof support. He added he was sure the Noisy Gobshite would have sought to assign culpability to a site manager if he had been present at the time of the illegal modification. He said, "That cowardly slope-shouldered turd would have shot all over me to save his own skin." Fortunately, the project manager has evidence in the form of an email proving Noisy Gobshite ordered the task. Noisy Gobshite sought to convince him not to forward it on to the local authority planning department. He threatened him when that didn't work. That backfired when the project manager told the investigators that Noisy Gobshite instructed him to delete the email in addition to neglecting the risks. My buddy, a lawyer, informs me that destroying evidence and meddling with a witness are crimes in of themselves. Noisy Gobshite will not stop excavating a deeper hole. If he gets away without facing legal repercussions, I will be really let down. He is nevertheless clearly in pain. The major story of the week? Noisy Gobshite has been let off. After learning from no less than 4 separate ACC workers, David announced it yesterday, Saturday. They eagerly wanted to tell him, he said. Then the discussion followed this pattern. Me, how is that feasible? How does the owner find himself let off? Did he stroll up to a mirror and declare, "You're as much use as Anne Frank's drum kit, you're fired"? David, nope. You know he inherited the company from his uncle and dad. Me, exactly. David said, you know his brother and cousin own a slice each. Me. Anyway. David? They fired him since their combined share is over 50%. Louise, the accounts manager, told me they are pissing their pants. As long as the money came in, they were content to leave Noisy Gobshites in charge, but today their golden goose seems very sick. Losing this contract and the fees and penalties scares them since it will close the company. They therefore ask the customer owner to bring ACC back to complete the deal. Part of that is persuading the building owner that Noisy Gobshite has nothing bearing on the business. Clearly, they are putting Noisy Gobshite beneath the bus. According to Louise, a Noisy Gobshite fired at him with screaming and violent threats. He required escort off the property. He has been phoning staff members, posing queries, and acts shocked when individuals refuse to assist him. Louise claims he truly wants to be loyal to him and thinks the staff like him. The man is in cloud cuckoo land, she declared. Me? He will be really offended. I wish I could have seen the face of Numpty as it was developing. David says, it's nothing that the scrot doesn't deserve. I promised the person who told me I wouldn't tell anyone yet, hence there is another, but I can't tell you about it. Me. You tease. What relevance does it have? David. It's significant. Transformational for the theme in life. Me. I wish I could tell you. It nearly gave me a hard-on. Me. Fing hell, it must be big if it can get that ugly appending to do anything except hang there like the last chicken in the shop. David. What a drama this is. She believes I should share with her this confidentially anything I learned. Given our marriage, she expects me to be able to tell her everything. I said it's not something I keep secret. Though I had hoped I would get, I appreciate you have integrity, dear husband. No. Mrs. here is enraged since she believes I'm a knobhead. Louise's employment title and name have been changed to defend the innocent. I don't want any of you holding your breath. It looks like it will be a few months before he can provide me with this fantastic news. The building owner, client has completed their inspection. 2 portions are unacceptable, the damage section and the one David ought to have completed but Stefan did instead. They are rather unhappy. Usually, the local government believes it's the owner cutting corners when listed structures are harmed. In this instance though, the owner is an austere ancient institution committed to maintaining significant structures. They didn't enjoy having to establish they had nothing to do with the building's damage as they are not used to being accused of anything dubious. David stated it appears they have written off ACC since they have made a type of tendering request to multiple other firms specialized in conservation. Then he spewed a bunch of jargon I neither knew or recall. Me. They have asked a few firms to quote a price for the job in simple English. David says, that's a very simplified way of describing it, but I don't have the time or the crayons to explain it to you. Me. Okay, let us say they are requesting job-related prices. Condescending, hence I was anticipating this tale would develop to a crescendo with noisy gobshites suffering something terrible. But it's just sort of faded with a whimper while we wait to find out what legal action will be pursued. Real life moves slowly, quite inconveniently. January 21, 2020. Hi there, this is Mark's wife. The moron requested me to apologize to the internet for his silence. On January 7th he was injured in an automobile accident. Though he won't be online for a little, we are confident he will fully recover. I explained it's only Reddit, but he's a compulsive freak about not disappointing others. I thus assured them I will include Reddit in the list. Here I am, informing all the folks he doesn't know why he hasn't finished imparting something they most likely aren't reading anyhow. March 2nd, 2020. Hello Mark, once more his wife. Direct messages numbered more than 200. I appreciate all of your remarks as well as your wishing of him well. I have read them all to him. I'll address the 3 most often asked questions. Mark's situation changed what? A big lorry drove straight into the rear of him while he was still stationary in his automobile about to exit the freeway. Between that lorry and the lorry ahead of Mark, his automobile was destroyed. Among his multiple shattered bones are nose, left orbital and cheekbone, left radius and ulna, forearm, left hand, right tibia and fibula, lower leg, and 4 ribs, one of which pierced his left lung. His left eye's center vision is somewhat damaged, however we hope this is transient. He needs more surgery since he has some tendon damage in his right hand and has 112 stitches overall. Though he looks like a wreck, he might heal free from any serious damage. If it were me, I wouldn't cope, but for as long as I have known him, he has always been as hard as nails. I went to pieces when I initially arrived at the hospital and he was lying there covered in blood, cables and tubes and couldn't talk properly. In minutes, he had me giggling. He has always been really adept in knowing the appropriate response. Not being able to use his hands is the thing most bothering him right now. When ought he to change the narrative? It might take some time. Though I could ask the guy David contacted for an update, I most certainly cannot tell a narrative like Mark can. I'm obviously biased, but Mark seems to be the most entertaining man I have ever met. I start to laugh so much I cannot breathe as he and David get going. I have advised him to temporarily forget about everything but getting well. If it starts to disturb him though, I've told him I'll do some secretary role-playing and he may write the narrative to me. He will finish it. He always finishes what he starts on. I wish my self-discipline was 100th that of his. A few have inquired whether they might give him money, cards, or gifts to cover missed income or medical expenditures. Thank you so much for offering, but it's not necessary. As we live in the UK, fortunately healthcare is free. He wants none of anyone's money. There is a long-standing charity we have sponsored called Macmillan Cancer Support if anyone feels driven to do something. At last update, Knowing who I am would help you. The David against boisterous gobshite narrative. The 22nd of May 2020. Slough mainly grunted, "This username belonged to Mark, my spouse." He penned the narrative on his friend David and a company owner he referred to as noisy gobshite. Up until he was in a January vehicle accident, Mark had been updating the narrative. He requested me then to let everyone know he was hurt and to update the narrative after he recovered. Mark sadly died barely over a week after my previous comment. Everyone thought he was healing, but he passed out and died extremely rapidly without warning. Although the team did all they could to save him, his aorta had burst. They claimed it is not unusual in auto collisions and had most likely been damaged during the accident. Although I'm sorry I didn't update this earlier, to be honest I totally neglected this page. I discovered how many people were waiting for Mark to wrap up the narrative only after I returned to go over Mark's words once more. Though I'm not sure how many people will view this update, would you kindly forward this news to everyone you know who was waiting for Mark to respond? Many thanks. I appreciate the hundreds of people that posted get well notes for Mark. I'm sorry I ignored you all for so long. But for the past 3 months I've been bewildered. Mark would have chastised me and most certainly objected to my leaving everyone in uncertainty. Many thanks to the persons who sent Macmillan cancer support money. Though it seems odd to have money given in the name of mostly Gruntled. At last, I want to thank the moderators, especially /u/Marari01, for guiding me and outlining how I might notify everyone. Monday, May 24, 2020. For the wonderful messages and virtual hugs I have seen over the past day, I am most grateful. For hours I have shed tears. One finds it difficult to define what good sobbing is when one loses someone. Those who have lost a loved one will most likely relate. Most of today has been good tears thanks to your postings and comments. Your thoughts have helped me to consider all of Mark's amazing traits and all the reasons I so much loved him. I began working on the update, then gave up around 8 times before mustering some fortitude. I am rather happy I did it. I appreciate once more the final small push I required from the moderator, /u/Marari01. It also helps me understand that I wish to undertake one more activity Mark would have liked. He consistently brought his starting work to completion. I will find out what has happened by talking to his buddies. I'll try to get myself current with everyone's outcomes. I know some of it already. I tell you ahead of time, it will be merely the facts, not like Mark's writing. Though I lack Mark's natural storytelling ability, the comments clearly indicate that many people were hoping for a resolution. The bare facts will have to be sufficient, please forgive. I'm going to talk to David, the guy he contacted. This year he has been a total rock for me. With luck, he will be able to cover all. As soon as I can, I'll input the change. I greatly appreciate it all. You are unaware of the extent this has benefited. Friday, May 25, 2020. Mostly because to what you all wrote, yesterday I had a better day. I woke up today enraged and cannot seem to calm myself. England observes a public holiday today, and I find myself wondering what we would be doing if Mark were here. He never threw a holiday away. I'm furious since, just because some self-serving moron couldn't wait to respond to a text message, I have lost the best person I have ever known in my life. I find the stupidity and unfairness intolerable. He will spend a few years behind bars. Not one thing though, will bring my Mark back. Sorry folks. I simply needed to let out a vent. Please, kindly, avoid using your phone while driving. Also, avoid tolerating it if you notice others doing it. March 6, 2020. I want to highlight 2 points. Firstly, let me thank everyone for their comments. The lovely things you have spoken about Mark have cheered me. It took so long to tell you Mark had died since I never imagined they would. Still, you did help, even though what you said was so poignant that I broke down hundreds of times reading the great words. Second, I'm sorry for not yet answering every comment. On some days I feel I could talk about Mark all day. On others, I cannot even think of him without going to pieces. If I haven't replied to your particular comment, it's not as though I haven't read all of them. Simply said, I can't respond as I have been in a poor state portion of the time. Eventually, I will answer to everyone, much as I did very slowly with the cards during his funeral. It looked like I was climbing a mountain that wouldn't stop expanding, but I finally answered all 322 of them even though I didn't think I would get through them all. One of numerous decent habits I picked up from Mark is finishing what I start. I only want to hear him once more calling me Carrot. Carrot is a Welsh term for love. My name is not Welsh. July 27, 2020 at 3:10 a.m. Whoa, I hadn't been online for a few days and now hundreds of messages show up. I can't sleep once more, and it came to me that I could change what happened to every one of the characters Mark had penned. It's just the facts. It won't have Mark's style or humor, it's just basic knowledge. Still, it's the most I can accomplish and more than nothing. Starting in the new post on a building project for a distribution center, site manager followed plans exactly. Mark had already mentioned what David and the site manager were dissatisfied about. Though that was before the coronavirus, being on a fixed 18-month contract as a self-employed individual was a drawback when compared to being an employee. Most of the staff were let go after the virus struck. Some were furloughed. The contract required the corporation to maintain paying the site manager whole. What he considered to be a negative aspect turned out to be a saving agent. The last David could tell me about Noisy Gobshite was that he no longer owns a third as he had to sell his part of the company under pressure. Regarding his assets, he had to sign a personal liability agreement in case total obligations exceeded the company's worth. According to what I understand of it, Noisy Gobshite must pay the extra, even if it means he loses his house, if for example, the total bills for his mistakes are higher than the company can pay. They couldn't continue trading if he was participating, hence he had to give up his part of the company. He needs them to carry on paying the attorneys. Though he hasn't been charged with a crime yet, he most certainly will. Something to do with wanting to be ready to go to court once he is charged. They take their time researching and being ready before they charge him. It also came to light that he warned of similar, but somewhat more minor, damage to a listed property in 2011. According to David, some anomalies found by the local government during the inquiry were forwarded to HMRC, the taxman. Also under investigation for that scam is Noisy. One of the first remarks on Mark's post was expensive cup of coffee, an understatement if ever I've seen one. The major headlines would be on Noisy Gobshite and the sexual assault, rape, of one of the PAs in the ACC headquarters in 2017 as well as sexual harassment of other employees. Though it wasn't boisterous Gobshite, the sexual assault occurred. It was former finance director. Stories of sexual harassment of female employees have not evolved and proved to be mere gossip. David. Working on his own and without social distance problems, he's most likely one of the few persons who were not impacted by the COVID-19 epidemic both financially and practically. He has carried on rather as normal. Job is easier, he stated. The usual plonkers are not there to trip on my equipment or stick plank ends into my finished work. David is not doing personally very well. David took Mark's death worse than anyone else outside his family. He tries not to show me this. He is a rock when he is with me. He has kept me from falling. Among three persons, he is the one I feel I can truly let go concerning Mark, or so I thought. David's wife was really nice and empathetic when I spoke with her last week, but she had to tell me to hold back a little with David. Although his wife claims he is shattering, he seems strong to me. She says he has taken Mark's death extremely severely. I thought he and Mark were close friends. She claims that in all their marriage, she only saw him cry once, that of their dog's death. When his parents deceased, she missed him crying. She notes he seems lost now and has sobbed quite a few times. The worst thing to find out is that his crying period falls after his visit with me. I'm awful. He obviously was mourning, but I had no idea I was burdening him so much. I'm going to cease venting all my suffering and be more cautious utilizing him. I wish he had said sooner. Maybe I should have known about it instead of being so self-servingly preoccupied with my own loss. That is as far as I'm aware of the updates cover. They are ready to observe his charged with noise. Should he be found guilty of damaging classified buildings, he might find himself imprisoned. Should he be found guilty of fraud, he will almost surely be imprisoned. In either case, the fines will be 6 figures. David mentioned wondering whether he would like prison coffee. His sense of humor is dark. July 27, 2020, at 3:10 a.m., there were alerts for 512 private messages and comments when I first arrived online earlier. I have no idea where to start. If you have written, kindly please not assume I am not appreciative as I have not responded. I felt fit to write at 3:10 a.m., hence I updated. Right now I doubt I could accomplish it. I have been staring at our weddings video. Though I believed it might help, I feel like a bus has knocked me down. I was devastated by Mark's speech. He discussed our meeting and his return to the house he shared with fellow Royal Marines. One among them asked Mark, "What's the joke then? You're once more smiling about something. Come on, what's so funny here?" Mark claimed he couldn't and wouldn't explain it to them, he just couldn't stop smiling every time he considered our date. Every time he thought of me, he claimed, he felt that. It made me grin and started me to cry on our wedding day, but this morning it broke me. I believe the agony is growing worse rather than becoming less. It bothers me too. All through me I feel it. I can't stop it. All I can think of lately is wish I had been in the car with him if I cannot have him back. Being an atheist, he always advised, This is all you get, so don't dare waste any of it. Therefore he wouldn't approve of me harming myself. It's just so difficult to keep going with this suffering. I doubt I can. I simply want it stopped. I apologize for carrying on like way. I would convey this to those I know since they worry, but writing here is like shouting into a diary. I apologize to all of you. Though I try to control things, I miss him so much and I can't stop it hurting. What should I do is unknown. August 31st, 2020 is. Although I responded to hundreds of messages since last updating this post, I did not get through all of them. Though the screen says I still have 92 waiting. I cannot see or read any more of the messages in chat. Should you not obtain a response, you fall into the 92. Our anniversary yesterday, August 30th, though I was looking forward it, when it came it was sort of empty. I cried when I viewed our wedding film. I replied to a few messages. Halfway through one message, I became abruptly overwhelmed with the knowledge that all the happiness I will ever experience in my life had already passed by. Every future endeavor I try will just be rewritten as Mark should be here but he isn't. Everything from here till I die is simply life. Just breathing and watching the days pass. Without Mark, it seems quite meaningless. I'm not sure whether I could write ever more. I appreciate all of you volunteering your time. You're really beautiful folks. Clutch the people you love like you might lose tomorrow. Avoid doing what I did and believe you could live in your own little heavenly bubble always. In the blink of an eye, some lazy morons can destroy all you love, leaving nothing ahead of you. Bye. My ex-husband had an affair with my sister while we were married. He recently sent me an email, and it has been 6 years since we last spoke. About 15 years ago, while celebrating my 18th birthday, I, 33F, met my ex-husband Dan, 40M, in a restaurant. He was indeed mature, friendly, and quite nice. He made me feel unique and cherished. To put that in some perspective, my family was dysfunctional. My dad would occasionally disappear for months and my mom and dad used to quarrel often. He passed away at the birth of my sister Abby, 5-year-old. From Abby's birth, my mother was far more loving of Abby than of me. My mother virtually raised Abby as her baby. She always did her best as a mother and supported me, so I always felt something was lacking even though she hardly neglected me. I felt as though nothing was lacking in my life until Dan entered it. He helped me. He was kind. He would always get me things and drive me for great distances. In his company, I felt whole. 4 years of dating preceded our marriage. Though Dan advised me to get my master's degree and supported me in developing my profession, I wanted a family immediately away. Before we began considering having children seriously, he wanted us to be in a steady financial posture. The best man I could have asked for. 5 years in a happy marriage turned out to reveal that my husband was seeing Abby behind closed doors. When my husband concocted an excuse, that he would be out of town for a week, but stayed in town and reserved a hotel room where he and Abby could have sex, I found out about the affair. 6 months behind my back, this has been continuing. I was rather heartbroken. Growing close was Abby and me. I cherished and looked after her. She could do this to me? Dan and I got into argument following D-Day. Given my sister, who had just turned 19, I questioned how he could treat me. He claimed he no longer loved me, I gave him insufficient attention, and I was not the same girl he had feelings for. I found I was pregnant among this disarray, but I lost the baby from stress. He was on a weekend trip with my sister, not even bothered enough to see me at the hospital when I lost our child. I ought to have spotted the signals. Though Dan would occasionally look at Abby and she would always be sensitive with him, it still bothers me greatly. As usual, my mother supported Abby's side and advised me to simply live with it. Having no one else left, I wanted to die. I lost my husband, my child, my entire family. Then my buddy Tina, my rescuer, showed up. She invited me to accompany her when she was moving to another state. I nodded affirmatively. By then I was divorced, and we lived in a tiny town, so I would naturally run across my sister and ex. It took me some time to adjust to my new life in another state, but I came across some nice folks there that helped me mend some damage. I still find problems with trust. 1 year of relocation to the new house brought me Tony, 32M, my now husband. Though I was somewhat cautious and kept my distance, he proved to me that he loves me a great lot and is reliable. I nearly forgot about the life I had back in my hometown since I was so delighted with him. His parents were really friendly and giving folks. A year ago we were married and I am currently carrying our first kid. My ex, Dan, sent an email yesterday. It simply brought back every negative memory. I'm only copying his email here. He said he is somewhat depressed with my sister and misses me. He attempted to find me but couldn't. Unlike me, she is quite stupidity and doesn't give him any attention. Abby merely texted him happy birthday and neglected to even get him a cake. I used to prepare him one and celebrate birthdays for him. She also disrespects him, is often in the bar with her pals, and is rather nasty. She had also cheated on him 5 times before, he added. The last affair was with his cousin. Our mother lets go on without stopping. He is about to seek for a divorce, but lately he has been absent from me a lot. He wants us to attempt once more as a couple and to have a family exactly like previously. He most likely does not know that I am married and have a baby en route since I just have Instagram, which is private. The grass on his side looks somewhat brown instead of green, so I'm not sure whether I should pity him or just laugh. Update. I wanted to thank you to those of you who messaged and offered support. I have decided to be done with it and email him. Dan, I am sorry to learn you are hurting, but there is no way I could be with you. Indeed, I used to be the girl who would have taken you back in a heartbeat, but that girl is no more present. That girl passed the day I was having a miscarriage. You were somewhere shucking with my sister. You never answered when I phoned you. I live with a fantastic man that loves and values me. Our first child is also en route. I am starting this new phase of my life with someone I love and very care for. Please do not thus get in touch with me ever again. You took a decision. You chose my barely legal sister instead of me. Whether she respects you or choose on you, it makes no difference to me. Anyone like you does not deserve respect and loyalty regardless. I left my former life in my former town. You would be best off continuing and giving some introspection some thought. You are simply a very insecure man getting old and would benefit from having a young woman at your side. Goodbye. Update 2. The 3rd of March. Many of you have asked me what he said. He answered within 1 hour of my emailing him. He stated he would always wait for me since no matter what, I will always be his baby doll, and he was dumb enough to believe I would still wait for him. I gave a hard cring. He used to call me that, but these days it feels repulsive. My sister and mother sent emails as well. Just congratulating me. My mother expressed excitement about her becoming a grandmother. Saying she will be the cool aunt, my sister likewise followed the same. These individuals truly betrayed me and forgot how they treated me when I needed them. Having been reading your comments, I grieved for a long period since it seems like the man groomed both my sister and me. I feel absolutely foolish. Though she was mature enough to know it's immoral to have an affair with a married guy, especially someone who is your sister's husband, I know I shouldn't be angry with her. I filtered every one of them. Already 5 months pregnant. I don't need extra tension. God bless my spouse. He later drove me to ice cream and comforted me when I started to cry. I want to be past this. Update. I guess I could write a more detailed update because I cooled down now. I needed it, so thank you to everyone for your support. Like a locomotive, the email from my ex suddenly hit me. I could see all he has done to me flashing back. You folks really deserve a thorough update. As I indicated in my last post, he responded within an hour following the return email I gave him. 2 further emails from my sister and mother arrived a few hours later. They forwarded them to my old email account, which I barely use today. I strive to keep a low profile. I have no idea how they learned about my pregnancy. I have not uploaded my baby bump pictures on social media or made any announcements yet. I just follow friends on Instagram, but it terrifies me. I started bawling on the spot. Fortunately, Tony, my husband, was here. He held me then laid me on the couch. He is totally familiar with me. I never covered anything from him. I worried a little bit about my sister's and mom's finding of me. He comforted me knowing that I live hundreds of miles from them. We live on the other side of our nation, after all. To ease me, he brought me for ice cream. Funny, it took 2 ice cream cones to at last help me relax. I informed him about my worries and that my sister and mother could insist to see my baby, a girl. To be on the lookout for them, he claimed he would chat to his police officer uncle. He will fight for it even if they visit here and press themselves on me. He told me not to worry about my ex, he is going to discuss this with his friend, a lawyer. He cannot damage me anymore. Even now my husband joked that he would migrate countries should he have to. Finally, someone on my post advised me to let the daycare know about my mother and sister should they attempt to abduct my child. Not that we intend to send her to childcare. I decided I would quit my job and take care of my baby and concentrate on healing from giving birth even though I am working right now. This is my own choice. I do have some reasonable savings in my personal bank. When our little princess is somewhat older, I will return to work. My in-laws are very remarkable. Living nearby are my Mill and Phil. They both are decent people who could assist with my child. You should not worry as well. Apart from my in-laws, I have a decent support system as well. Basically, Tina and her friend Jenny adopted me. Funny. They constantly supported me and are truly nice individuals. Though I have no idea what the future holds, at least I am surrounded by some decent people I never knew growing up. I shall now take your leave and enjoy my spouse treating me. I will keep you folks informed should something major occur. Blocked are my mother, sister and ex-partners. Not one update has come since. Second story. My husband's nephew rested his hand on me while asleep. Tell anyone, this entire family will be destroyed. The godson and nephew of my husband is 17. For a month my husband received a job offer abroad. We live in a house, and my sister-in-law, husband's sister, advised me to stay with them in their guest room as I felt uneasy being alone in the house. Even with me coming from a shattered home without family to adore me, especially his oldest sister, 47, I love my husband's family, a large, loving family that took me in and accepted me with open hearts and arms. I am 32 and my hubby is 41. Living with my sister-in-law was great. Apart from missing my spouse, who I spoke with a few times a day, everything was going perfectly. Being a night owl, I stayed in the living room binge-watching House of the Dragon when everyone went to bed yesterday. I probably nodded out on the couch. Later on when I woke up, my nephew's hand was under my shirt. I shoved him away but he held my mouth and pulled me back on the couch. A few times he struck me hard, telling me to stop moving. I swung a cola glass I had on the coffee table against him. My sister-in-law came downstairs after hearing him grunting in agony. She began battering him and shoving him away. She asked him to visit the guest house, and she followed him most likely to check his head damage since he was bleeding. Later on, she returned and showed me to the bathroom. I had cut my hand with the glass and had peed myself. Later on she stayed with me in the room and handed me sleeping drugs. Today at midday I woke up. Everyone but my sister-in-law was away. Every bit of warmth has disappeared. She said she was quite let down by me. I used her son even though she invited me into her house. She saw everything. She knew the truth, I told her. She said she saw nothing and that nobody would have believed someone like me. She wondered whether breaking this family on my conscience would be in line with my values. She blocked my path when I wanted to depart since what would the family say? I vowed I wouldn't say anything, then started to cry and asked her to let me go. I'm home now and not sure what to do. My husband will be destroyed from this. His family is his pride and jewel in life. He adores them. Suppose he hates me for shattering his family and tarnishing their name. Worse, supposing he doesn't believe me. 3 weeks from now he will be home. By then most likely the black eye will have disappeared. Edit. I apologies. I messed his age. He will be turning 16 in a few months, he is 15. I produced poor arithmetic. Edit 2. I appreciate you answered. I apologies for not answering every query. I should say that lately I spoke with my husband. For him, the regular planned phone call before bed is, but I simply broke down crying and told him everything. FaceTimed me and saw my face. He never likes me to be home alone, hence he told me to prepare a suitcase and wait for his friend to come pick me up. After little more than a year of marriage, my husband and I have been living in this city, his hometown, for a few months. Here I know not many people. Still, he advised me to live with his friend and his family. Good people are those they are. Tomorrow he is flying back here. Thank you. I apologize once more for not being able to respond to everyone. Update. Hi everyone, this is a throwaway account. I got much of encouragement when I wrote here earlier. I owe 100% to the online community for which I followed the right course and informed my husband. If it were up to me and my own ideas I would have just kept this private and tried to go on. I do not want to read all the disgusting and abusive DMs like the ones I received from my first article, hence I will not respond any DMs. I would gladly respond to your comments here, but following this update I am removing this account as well. I would wish to respond to a couple inquiries. First one, a query on my most recent update. Why did my husband believe me without asking questions? Many conjectured that my spouse wasn't very astonished since he presumably knew something about his nephew. No, I asked him this. He simply believes me, not noticing the injuries on my face. I have never given him any grounds not to believe or trust me. Why would my spouse advise me to live with the family of his friend? Many asked why I wasn't independent enough to live on my own alone. To me this is a brand new town. Coming from a large city with people all around to go to a smaller village as living alone in a large house changed me greatly. I was uneasy, hence my husband advised me to live with his sister and get close to my new family. After what happened though, I returned home. The acts of his nephew stunned my husband, and to be honest, He had no idea what to anticipate from his parents or nephew anymore. He didn't want me alone as he was afraid they might hurt me. He insisted that I kept his family in dark about where I was also. He was just afraid. I apologize for also mistaking his age. Born November 06, he will turn 16 shortly. I made him 17 by doing the arithmetic wrong. The next day following my post, my husband arrived home late in the afternoon. Seeing him now makes me happier than it did years ago. He told his sister he was on his way when phoning her. He looked to have been crying when he returned home. He urged me to pursue charges, but only if I wanted. He questioned whether I wanted to do it. She tried to point the finger on me when he was at his sister's, but he advised her to cease the bullshit. If she truly loved her son, he questioned her why she wasn't more concerned about him, the way he progressed to overpowering a sleeping family member. He also wanted her to explain why she handed me sleeping drugs. About that, I have no idea why I grabbed them. I recently did. Since childhood, I have sadly always followed those I considered to have control over me. She said she couldn't help me relax as I was having panic attacks. She still thought I came on to him though, and denied that her son had behaved in such manner. When my husband spoke with his nephew as well, he was disappointed to see that he showed almost any regret or affectivity at all. He never even offered an apology. I hit him. He said he was attempting to wake me awake as the couch wasn't comfortable. We have written a report. Not much more I could do. To be honest, I wanted it to be out there even if I don't see anything coming of it. The brother of my spouse called to shout at him. Starting with the smear campaign, they have already my spouse shared with them my side. I'm not sure the person they decide to believe. 6 siblings make up my husband's family. We will have to watch this develop. My spouse doesn't particularly want to damage his nephew, who is still a child. He feels he needs aid, but not the kind his parents are providing, enabling him. He also expressed the feeling that many of you have. This lad will do it once more most likely, and I wasn't first. He loves him very deeply, thus it hurts him. But he has to tell others what he is capable of doing to safeguard their families. Over past few days, my hubby has been quiet and aloof. About that, I had no idea what to do. Simply said, I felt somewhat ashamed. I wasn't sure if I should ask his pardon and apologize to him for souring his relationship with his beloved sister and her family. He looked shocked at me when I at last plucked the bravery to do it. He started to cry and admitted he was the one sorry. He saw himself at last providing the large family I had always dreamed of. He held me. I have nothing about my family. I sobbed in his arms. Right now, we are not sure what will happen. Our plans call for us returning to the large city. About my new employment, I have no idea what to do. After few months, I have to stop. Since I teach preschool, it should not be difficult for me to get a new job or retrieve my former one. Still thanks once more. I doubt I will be posting going forward. I simply want to move on and heal. After my sister stole from me, my mother wants to defend her by sending me to military school. This took place when I was 14 years old, approximately 1 year before the divorce of my parents. My younger sister would always spend her allowance as if it were water, particularly on things like makeup, meals from the mall, video games, and clothing from Hot Topic that she purchased. In spite of the fact that I was also given an allowance, my father made me earn it by cleaning the house and working in the yard. My mother never forced my sister to do any duties, with the exception of cleaning her room, and my sister never did anything she didn't want to do unless her father was present to oversee her. In order to acquire additional funds, I mowed lawns, collected abandoned cans from various locations throughout the area in order to exchange them for a 5-cent deposit, and performed various other odd tasks across the neighborhood. I was putting money down at the time in order to get a scooter so that I could go around town. During the course of 2 years, I was able to save almost $2,000 by working a variety of odd jobs and putting away the majority of my allowance. The accumulation of that money, on the other hand, was not a simple task, primarily because of my sister. Despite the fact that she was aware of all the small hiding places where I used to keep my money, she would steal from them. The following is a memorable passage that I have paraphrased from what I remember. My response: "Hey sis, did you take my money again?" "Sister. What is it?" "No." When she was caught in the act of lying, she would stutter. "You are a terrible liar," I said to you. $100 is missing from my savings account. Sis is saying, "Leave me alone, I didn't do it." She begins to act as if she is crying and then rushes to her mother. Sis is saying, "Mommy, bro is picking on me." My response: "She stole from my savings again." "Shut up," my mother yelled at me while snapping her fingers. "Is it not obvious that mama's little girl is feeling upset? That is all there is to it?" She said that she did not do it, so it is safe to assume that she did not do it. In that case, I'll put you on the ground if you don't let this go. The other person. I know she did it, and if you don't get the money back, I'll get Dad's help. Mom. There is no longer any requirement for that. Another thing is that you don't have any evidence that she stole your money. Yes, I do, says I. Every single dollar that I add to it is recorded in a ledger that I keep. A total of X was reached 3 days ago, however at this point, there is only Y. There is a missing $100, and you are aware that she has already stolen from my savings account on multiple occasions. That being said, I am aware that Sis has already used up all of her stipend for this month, but you still went shopping yesterday. Exactly where did she obtain the money, don't you think? Following a brief moment of reflection, Mom scowls. What do you know, mister? You are firmly planted. I am going to grab the belt if you do not go to your room, she said. I had the ability to discuss the matter further. However, if there is one thing that I picked up from being in that environment, it was the knowledge of when to stop talking and simply call my father. Therefore, without uttering a single word to either of them, I made my way to my room and slammed the door shut. After that, I reached for my brick-like Nokia cell phone, which I had at the time, and dialed my father's number while he was at work. After he did not pick up the phone, I left a message in which I explained everything. He contacted me back about an hour later and assured me that he will take care of the situation. Not long after that, I heard the ringing of the landline phone in the house, and then I heard my mother yelling at my father as she was on the phone in the kitchen. It was difficult for me to listen from my room, and the only thing I managed to pick up on was my mother trying to excuse her behavior. When she was in the wrong, however, that strategy was never successful, and she ended up saying something along the lines of, "Fine. In the event that she did, in fact, steal the money, you're obligated to repay it because she has already spent it." On the other hand, my mother yelled at me while she threw open my door. "You little snitch, I can't believe you blew the whistle on me. You couldn't just let a little money slip through your fingers after everything I do for you." My response, "So you admit that my sister took it then?" A sneering mother says, "You know what? It makes no difference to me. More money is required by girls than by boys. There is no reason why you shouldn't just hand it over to her." Simply said, it wasn't even that much. "It wasn't just a little money, and you ought to know that," I said. In spite of the fact that she took $100, I would still want it back even if it was only $1. If someone stole from your purse, you would not want it to happen to you. The same thing would happen if my sister stole from me. She is guilty, as you are aware. One way or another, I want that money backdated. She did nothing while I put great effort on it. Mom. My darling has no responsibilities. She is a princess and ought to be treated accordingly. Me? That isn't what bothers me. She may go be a princess away from my possessions and away from me. Mom. That's it, you tiny expletive. I'm going to knock your ass. Me, standing up and staring her eye to eye, as I was already as tall as her at 14 and pretty strong from all the outdoor work I was doing. Go ahead and try it. Since I did nothing wrong, I won't let you. My mother froze in position for a second, then let out a loud "Ray," and swung her arm to try and knock something off my dresser, but she swung too low and struck the dresser itself, which I assume truly hurt. She was giving me a terrible face as she grasped her hand to try and hold in the agony. Her teeth were snarling. She simply turned around then and left. When she didn't weigh was to go to her wine fridge and proceed to get drunk, I heard her making a racket, yelling and smashing the wall as she went down the hall, down the stairs, into the kitchen, doing her regular routine when she didn't weigh was denied. From her bedroom door, my sister was watching me. She glanced at me scared and ran back inside her room, slamming the door. Mom was fast changing. She was her ace in the hole for getting away with the horrors she did to me. My dad came home from work a few hours later and marched my sister into my room to see me. She admitted to pilfering from me, then informed me I was not grounded. Sis refused to even look at me the entire time she was being ordered to apologize, and she did so in the most quiet and squeaky voice at first, until my dad regularly told her to speak up till she was almost screaming it. Dad then handed me a $100 cash to cover what my sister stole and mentioned she was grounded for a week. The pilfered money will show up from her stipend. She began crying and called Dad horrible, then dashed to her room. Ignoring all of us, my mother merely sat on the rear patio intoxicated on her preferred wine. She never apologized to me and even behaved as though the whole incident never took place. My sister still received her next allowance as well, but at that time my mother gave it to her rather than my dad. On my dad's day off from work a few days later, we visited a nearby retailer where he purchased a combination safe to deposit my money and other little items in. We omitted telling my mother or sister I had it. It was set for a 4-digit code. To the best of memory, I used 4,962 back then. After locking the safe and emptying all of my money into it, I stored it at the rear of my closet. A few weeks passed, and one day after returning from mowing some neighbors, I discovered my room had been rifled. To let her know what sis did to my room, I gave my mother a call. Mom said, "My baby didn't do this." "Well then, did you?" I said. "Mom, no." "Me? Well, it could only have been one of you. No one else was here and this room was clean when I left." Mom clearly upset at getting caught by reason. "Fine, but if she did, then so what? You had it coming from not being kinder to her anyhow." She then turned to dash off. I phoned my dad once more and left another note explaining what transpired on his work answering machine. I then went to tell my sister I knew she was the one who tore apart my room. I said she couldn't get to my money anymore since I had locked it up in a safe before she could even try to respond to me. She then had an awful fit and naturally, nasty mama bear came running to save her. My sister kept wailing in her room for the next 20 minutes while I reiterated that sis couldn't get at my money anymore and returned to clean her room. Only thrown and spread around, nothing was truly missing or ruined. I gathered everything and restored it exactly how it was. Still, it was the most arrogant I had ever felt as I cleaned my room. The next day though, I discovered it ripped once more, and this time my window was damaged too. Not able to get the safe open, sis had thrown it out the window. I immediately contacted my father, and when my parents returned from work, my sister came clean about having done it, as if she were glad of herself. Saying I shouldn't have received the safe in the first place, my mother really tried to side with her. But, my dad chewed her up and stated he got it for me since he was sick and tired of her stealing from me. My dad has to pay me back each time she pilfers money from me and spends it since my mother never would. My dad got me a lock for my door and even a combination key lock box with the key to my room next to the door. We had to replace the complete window from my room. After shattering my window, my sister ground herself for a month and spent that whole time pining in her room. Mom always let dad go back to do what she wanted, like watching TV or playing video games, whenever he was home till he left work. Knowing that my sister and mother would have gone out of their way to make me more miserable, I decided not to say anything. Once her month-long grounding ended, my sister started pestering me for money each time she spent all of her stipend. She never saved anything, hence I just pointed out to her that she would never pay it back. To be honest, I created an IOU to see whether she would really sign it before dad. She ripped the paper in half later and went crying to mom once more over my rudeness. Mom and she would try to make me cough up the money for her, but I would remind her what dad would do. Thus if my sister needed any more money, it wouldn't come from me. My mom then actively sought to send me to military school, but dad objected. Also, for anyone wondering why my dad didn't simply assist me create a savings account back then, I honestly don't know. Saving it in cash seems like the way we handled things. Update. I once made my mother walk straight into my door. My sister had thrown my safe through my bedroom window, so shortly after my dad provided me a safe for my money, he also got me a deadbolt lock for my door with a wall-mounted lockbox requiring a code to access the key. Together, we installed the lock and lockbox while my sister and mother were not home. My sister came back and initially walked past my room. I watched her glance at the lock, then dashed to get mom. Coming thundering down the stairs to meet my dad and me was both of them. What I recall is the following paraphrased. Mom says, pointing and snapping a few times, "What the hell is that?" Father. "A door lock." Mom. "I know what the expletive thing is. Why is it in there?" Dad. "Because you never see fit to reprimand or stop our daughter from taking from Kegel or ransking his room. The lock stays so going forward." Mom. "This is my house and he is just 14. His door cannot have a lock." Dad said, "No, this is our house. Last I checked though, I paid most of the expenses including the mortgage. You seldom pay anything, and I'm tired of you giving our daughter such preference that Kegel suffers constantly." Mom says, "Well then, I demand you tell me the code for the lockbox at least." Deadpan staring dad. "I'm not doing that because you've shown I can't trust you anymore." Mom then blasted her top and rushed down the steps. My sister merely stood there pouting and then made slow walk into her room. With the new lock, things were good. It became second nature to me to lock it each time I left my bedroom. Many times when I entered the code to obtain the key, I spotted my sister and mother staring at me, but I always made sure to conceal their line of sight using my hand or body. Though they hated that, there was nothing they could do about it. One day late in the month, my sister came begging me for $40 to get a video game she absolutely desired. Me. "Why do you keep asking for money when you and I both know you'll never pay it back?" Sis. "I swear, I'll pay it back." Me. "You won't?" You know you would much prefer spend all of your allowance than pay me back. You spend everything you have then some each month. That's what you do always. Sis. No, I do not. Well then, how about we test that? I ask. Always have a witness for contracts, folks. I then went into my room, acquired a piece of paper and a pen, handwrote an IOU contract stating sis would pay me back the $40 upon receiving her monthly stipend, and dad would co-sign the IOU. After reading the paper, S began sniffling. She ripped it in half and then ran screaming to mom once more, like she did every single time her way was denied. Mom! Sis, bowing. Sobbing. Mom, what is it, darling small prince? What then did Kegel do? Me. I asked her to sign an IOU fronting dad as she wanted to borrow money. She then started to freckle. Mom. And why would you pursue that? She merely sought a small loan. Me. Would you sign the IOU also to make sure she pays the money back? Mom says, you little expletive. I am not required to sign anything, now only loan her the money. Me, not without a signed IOU. Mom stood up, arm out as if about to strike me, then pulled back. Mom, you have to have a paper trail for everything. You're just like your father. I'd say it's a good thing I'm just like dad because it's far better than being just like sis is, because you never do anything good. Me, beginning to stroll up the stairs to my room at this point. Mom asked, what was that, you little expletive? Just as I entered my bedroom and locked the door, she started hurrying up the stairs. Back then, my mother used to yell at me by throwing open my bedroom door. She opened the in one sweeping stroke, lunging her body forward, but at this point I had only had the lock on my door for a brief while, so she wasn't used to it yet. She tried to throw open my door and smashed rather loudly directly into the deadbolt after I shut it. Then I heard her slump to the ground and begin to produce agonizing cries. She had very hard banged her body and face against the door. Her lip was plump and her forehead developed a bump from this old-fashioned solid wood door. She was spread out on the floor pounding her fists when I opened the door. Mom exclaimed, you did this to me, you little expletive. Me? You did it to yourself. Mom, you are anchored. Get away from my sight. I then called Dad and he simply grumbled over the phone over the entire matter. He stated I wasn't grounded, but I was still in huge trouble for goading her and to let him handle her when he got home. That was about it. Dad gave me a harsh lecture at the end, coupled with extra housework and a cut in my stipend that month. Every time sis begged for money following that day, I asked her to sign an IOU. She truly did object to that. Update 2. It blew up in her face when my mother tried to have me sent to military school and produced my dad's signature. When I stood up to my mother when she threatened to spank me, she seemed to get more cautious that if she tried to harm me it would end very poorly for her. The final time. She mainly yelled at me. She never laid a finger on me ever more until years later, when she wanted my house. I gave it no thought and carried on with my regular schedule of classes and odd work. Right around my 15th birthday, my dad gave me an engine kit for my bike to get around town. I would be better off saving for a car than a scooter, he advised, and this would help now. I stayed saving for a car and finally agreed with his reasoning. A few days later, though, I came over a military academy leaflet while clearing grass off the rear patio after mowing the yard. It was on the floor under a chair close to where my mother preferred to sit and sip wine. I waited until my dad arrived home to show him what I had discovered. I felt she was planning some sort of mad scheme. He went to see my mom with the booklet and asked her about it since he was somewhat irate but didn't jump to judgments. Dad said, "Honey, what's this?" Mom becomes white upon seeing the leaflet. "Nothing. I had never seen it before." "Dad, exactly? You know I wouldn't let you send Kegel to military school if you intended to try to send him." Mom broke her front at that and exclaimed, "He has to learn some discipline. He locks his door often, hence I am unable to even spank him anymore as he is too big. This is the only means I have left to chastise him for being a disobedient brat." "Dad. Kegel stood up to you for your silly favoritism and did nothing wrong. Given you in the way you treat her and let her get away with stealing from her brother, our daughter is the brat if anything. And as far as I'm concerned, this conversation about sending Kegel to military school is closed. Should you try to send him, then help me. I will bring the hammer down on you whatever method I can." "Mom. Well, I guess this entire family is just going to take away what little power I have left in this house then. Should I have nothing, I could as well be nothing." "Dad. You and I both know you would much choose Keel over being nothing. Cut back on your theatrical behavior. Now a guy with his own money, Kegel is growing up." Mom left the room angrily then. Before school, the next morning, I watched her desperately attempting to fit something into the kitchen garbage can. I dug out what she was trying to hide while waiting for her to head out for work. She filled out the military school application totally in her hand. On it, both parents or legal guardians had to sign. The paper included 2 signatures. I understood Mom's, but the other seemed to be a poor attempt to copy Dad's. His sleek and sophisticated signature was something he took great satisfaction in. There is no way my mother could replicate it without seeming like fraud. She probably understood it once she was confronted and gave up attempting to send me away. Later I showed my dad the papers and kept them. Though he was furious, he let it go knowing she had done it already. Still, he filed the paperwork right in case. A few more months later, word leaked out that my mother was seeing an old high school ex-boyfriend. My dad filed for divorce. That was his last straw. Months later, after he acquired another house, I moved in with him. Pulling out the military school records my mom had created with his signature, he accelerated the divorce rather fast. And it wasn't only that, he also had evidence she created his signature on at least 1 credit card application and one other thing I don't remember, which made Mom worry about being arrested for fraud. She agreed to most of his requirements, so they proceeded really quickly through court. Dad didn't want the house, so Mom bought it. Nevertheless, she also insisted on alimony and child support since my sister, predictably, decided to remain living with her. For a decade of monthly payments, the judge granted my mother child support and a minimal alimony award. Alimony essentially paid my sister's allowance anyhow. Mom was really irate about that and vowed to bring him back to court, but for years he held the falsified signatures over her head to calm her. My sister threw out her mouth at me and smugly claimed Mom informed her she was a princess and the more deserved sibling, so explaining the reason I was leaving the house. Not caring anymore, I merely shook my head and advised her to consider what she wants. Then I went out the door, at last as free as a bird. My connection with my sister, who paid once-weekly visits to Dad's residence, deteriorated until at last we stopped communicating completely for years. Mom's residence hardly appealed to me. She essentially turned my former room into a home office anyway. My mom favored my sister and ignored me. In the end, my perfect sister ran off with Mom's money, leaving her devastated. I was 23 years old and lived at home with my mom, 52 years old, and older sister, 26 years old. This manner of life persisted after my dad's death 5 years ago. Emma, my sister, was Mom's favorite from the beginning. Anyone who spent even 5 minutes with our family could see this. It wasn't just me. When she was a kid, Emma was the center of attention and the recipient of all the newest fashions and technology. Even though Mom never missed an Emma school function, she would make up an excuse like, "I'm too tired," or "I have to work late," whenever I asked her to attend my own. Eventually, I grew accustomed to the pain. There was little change as we aged. While Emma attended a prominent university to get a law degree, I got my associate's degree in graphic design from a small college. Emma was the object of Mom's incessant boasting. "My Emma is going to be a big-shot lawyer one day," she would proudly proclaim. All the while, people either didn't care or were downright disappointed by my chosen work path. However, the true problem wasn't merely favoritism, it was the unequal allocation of domestic duties. I was supposed to handle all the housework since Emma was supposed to be studying. When I say all, I really do mean it. I would begin my day at 6 o'clock every morning. Making breakfast would be my first order of business. Emma favored a vegetable omelet accompanied by a serving of fruit, while Mom liked her eggs cooked to perfection with toast and no crust. In my regular state, I would hastily seize a granola bar for my own consumption. Before going out to my part-time job at a nearby coffee shop, I would tidy up the kitchen, wash the dishes and begin a load of laundry after breakfast. Despite Mom's lack of request, I worked there to help out around the house and save up for my own place. I would do everything from dusting to mopping, vacuuming, and everything in between as soon as I got home in the afternoon. Meal planning and grocery buying were also my responsibilities. This was never easy because both Mom and Emma had very specific nutritional needs. Even the dinner was a show. While Emma sat on the couch, fiddling with her phone, I would whip up extravagant dinners. Talking to her mom about her day, school, and future goals was a regular occurrence. Word of mouth would be an uphill battle for me. Guess who had to do the dishes after supper? I am, once again. Mom would give me a disapproving look and say things like, "Your sister needs to focus on her studies," whenever I ventured to complain or ask for assistance. One day, she will have a prosperous life and be able to provide for all of us. Assisting around the house would be the bare minimum you can do. Emotionally and physically, it was draining. While Emma was free to unwind and have fun, I felt like a housekeeper in my own house, rushing around all the time. Worst part was that Mom was completely unconcerned with my attempts. From that point on, it was Emma this, and Emma that. Things reached a boiling point on a certain day. I was hoping to reconnect with some college pals that day, because it was a Saturday. Our design class was going to have us work on a collaborative project. The opportunity to leave the house and engage in social interaction that did not include serving coffee or doing chores was more than enough to make me look forward to it all week, and not only because of the project. As is my habit, I got up bright and early to finish my errands before I left. My mom walked into the kitchen just as I was preparing breakfast. "Oh great, you're awake," she remarked. "Today, I'm counting on you to give the living room a good scrub. We need to scrub the carpet and remove and wash the curtains." My chest ached. "But Mom," I said, "today I am scheduled to... Remember when I told you about our group project?" Mom scowled. "You can reschedule, right? Do not overlook this. Next week we have company coming over, and I would like the house to be spotless." In an effort to maintain composure, I inhaled deeply. "We will have to reschedule. This has been in the works for weeks. Perhaps Emma could pitch in and clean a little." It was almost 10 in the morning when Emma, seemingly at a whim, strolled into the kitchen still dressed in her pajamas. "Morning," she said with a yawn as she reached for a muffin from the platter I had just placed. Turning to Emma, Mom's expression softened. "Hello there, darling. Had a good night's sleep? Rest assured, there will be an online study group meeting later on." With a muffin still in her mouth, Emma nodded. Mom redirected her gaze to me, her face becoming even more stern. "Your sister needs to get some serious schoolwork done. No one should expect her to clean. Her education is of the utmost importance to you." Something inside of me snapped. Every bit of pent-up resentment, animosity, and pain finally burst forth. "And what about my education?" I spoke more loudly as I inquired. "What will happen to my plans? This is my life. Isn't their significance immense?" Mom appeared surprised. To which she responded, "Of course they matter, but..." I interrupted her. "But it's still not equal to Emma's, is it? Never on par with Emma's." Finally speaking up was Emma, who had been observing this discussion with wide eyes. "Stop including me in this, please. When Mom wants you to help out around the house, it's not my fault." I was already furious before that. "Although you have never once offered to lend a hand, please don't take this personally. Sit back and enjoy the ride." Mom made an effort to step in. "Now let's all calm down, there's no need to..." Still, I was feeling very well at the moment. I was helpless as years of suppressed feelings finally broke out. "No more settling down for me, Mom. I've had enough of being the housekeeper. Treating me like Emma is beneath me and I'm sick of it. Everything, including the partiality and unreasonable expectations, has had enough of me." I looked across at Emma. "Why does Mom never ask you to help out with housework?" Her reasoning is that she believes you have great potential to become wealthy and provide for her in the years to come. It's quite the burden, isn't it? But well, at least I'm doing all the work, so you can relax. Redness spread across Emma's face. "You can't be fair. My education are a top priority for me. And I don't?" My response was a rapid one. "In addition to schooling and taking care of the house, I'm working part-time. When will it be safe to think about the future?" Again, Mom attempted to intervene. "You are aware, my darling, that we value all that you do? The difference is that Emma's chosen profession will, in the end, pay off more handsomely." A slap in the face was the feeling I got from such remarks. "Is that all? Is the amount of money I could make in the future the only thing that matters to this family?" Mom swiftly reversed her course. "No, it is not my intention. Compared to what you're studying, a job in law offers more stability." "Coloring and design, Mom. One of my majors is graphic design. Is it so important that you've taken the time to research my life goals and aspirations?" I knew exactly what to do based on Mom's expression. She was unconcerned. Without ever truly comprehending it, she had dismissed my career path. I pushed back the tears that threatened to well up in my eyes. At this very moment, I would not weep. "What do you think? That's it. Today I will not be cleaning the living room. I intend to get down with my pals and get some stuff done on my project. Plus, I'm leaving the house until we have a serious talk about how things work here when I return." I then snatched my suitcase and bolted from the kitchen, leaving Mom and Emma standing there in disbelief. A strange feeling of relief mingled with fury and hurt as I banged the front door shut behind me. I had finally spoken out for myself after what felt like an eternity. The remainder of the day slipped my mind. In an effort to forget about the argument from earlier, I got together with my pals and dove headfirst into our project. The day progressed though, and uncertainties began to arise. Did I react too strongly? Had I been self-centered? Perhaps I should have simply rearranged my plans and cleaned up as Mom requested. Note, I got back to my house that night, emotionally and intellectually drained by the day's events, but still intent on keeping my word and having that serious talk. But the tension was palpable the moment I stepped through the door. When I walked into the living room, neither Mom nor Emma gave me a second look. With some hesitation, I spoke up and asked, "Hey, can we talk?" No sound. Both of them peered intently at the television, but it was clear that neither of them was paying attention. I gathered my courage, inhaled deeply, and chose to go ahead anyhow. "Listen, I get that you had a long morning, but I feel like we have to talk about this. Emma, all I'm asking is that you pitch in a bit more with the housework. I would feel more comfortable if we were treated fairly." Mom finally turned to look at me, her face showing no emotion. "I think you've said quite enough already," Emma interjected, her tone betraying her contempt. "Indeed, your voice was clearly audible to us earlier today. You're envious of my future prospects and me. How egocentric are you?" I was hit square in the stomach. Is it egocentric? Asking for aid isn't selfish in any way. Grandma scowled. "It's like you're breaking the silence in this house. Her education should be Emma's top priority. You're simply envious because you're aware that your small pastime won't be very successful." Hobby. I said it again, my jaw dropping. "Graphic design is a real career, Mom, if you'd ever bothered to learn about it." "Enough," Mom interrupted me. "I won't have you disrespecting us like this in our own home." Abashed, I remained still. It had been my sincere wish that they would have considered my words and come to terms with how unfair things had been. Nevertheless, they redoubled their efforts. "Our very own home," I murmured again. "I see. I suppose it's no longer my home." I retreated to my room after saying nothing further. I returned outside after stowing a few articles of clothing and necessities in a bag and retrieving my laptop. Mom and Emma continued to stare fixedly at me from the living room. "I'll be at Sarah's," I texted, mentioning my college best buddy. "I'll come back for the rest of my stuff later." Relieved and heartbroken all at once, I slammed the door behind me. Unfortunately, I needed some breathing room to figure out what to do next, so I resorted to this temporary measure. Unlike at Sarah's, I wouldn't be made to feel like an inferior or treated like a maid. I have no idea what the future holds, but I am certain that I'm entitled to better than this. I should begin to believe that now. Update. I must admit, leaving my family home has been an eye-opening experience. It has been approximately 3 months since I made the move. My friend Sarah has been my roommate, and we've been dividing up the rent and housework evenly. Everything I do on a daily basis has changed. Since I no longer have to worry about taking care of the house, I've had more time than ever before to devote to my education and my emerging profession as a graphic designer. I've interned at a regional marketing agency, finished a number of freelance jobs, and am now building my portfolio. When you're not worn out from being a maid for other people, you can do so much. However, unexpected events do happen in life. While grocery shopping last week, I unexpectedly ran into Mrs. Johnson, our neighbor. She looked worried and wanted to know how I was doing before she inquired about Mom. Evidently, she had observed Mom's recent struggles and apparent overwhelm while tending to the yard. According to Mrs. Johnson, "Your mother insisted she was fine, despite her offer of assistance." I was under the impression that Emma was assisting her. A wave of shame and anger washed over me. Obviously Emma was making everything worse. Since when would she begin? The most shocking thing, though, wasn't even that. In her usual gossipy but well-intentioned manner, Mrs. Johnson spilled yet another bombshell. "And how is Emma's academic progress coming along? I pray that the incident involving Professor Andrews has not had a significant impact on her." Mrs. Johnson's eyes expanded, so I must have appeared perplexed. "Oh no, I guess you were aware. Professor Andrews and Emma have been spotted all over town together quite a bit. There has been discussion." Feeling disoriented, I thanked Mrs. Johnson and limped out of the store. My ideal sister Emma was careening around with a professor instead of concentrating on her promising legal career. The neighbors even took note and started chatting about it. So it must have been really major. I was unhappy most of the time, but there was a twisted satisfaction in there somehow. The golden child wasn't all that golden after all. It broke my heart to see Mom trying to get everything done that I used to do on her alone. Tragic for Emma, who put her career in jeopardy for a professor's romance. I felt terrible for our family since it appeared like everything was coming to a crumbling end without me. Given this data, I am unsure of my next steps. While a part of me longs to make amends and reach out, another part recalls the pain and years of inferiority and questions whether it's worthwhile. My personal development and recovery are my current priorities. Self-worth and my chosen profession are becoming more apparent to me. A life where my worth is recognized and my efforts are valued is something I'm working toward. Perhaps Mom and Emma will come to terms with what they've lost in due time. Perhaps they will not. I used to try so hard to win their favor, but now that I'm on my own, I recognize that it was a mistake. The circle of life always seems to close, doesn't it? When I finally felt like I had things under control 6 months later, life decided to throw me another curveball. My phone rang on a peaceful Sunday night while I worked on a freelancing assignment. Yeah, Mom. Since my departure, we hadn't had many conversations, so I was hesitant to respond. My mother's inconsolable wailing greeted me when I took up the phone. Mom, what's wrong? My pulse pounding, I inquired. She choked out, Emma's gone, as she sobbed. She took the most of my savings when she ran off with a boy from her university. The sensation was as if someone had doused me with icy water. Hearing that Emma had done something so careless and damaging was upsetting since, despite everything, she was still my sister. I'm coming over, I announced, hastily retrieving my keys. My heart nearly burst at the sight of my childhood house when I arrived. Compared to the spotless home Mom had usually kept, the house was in utter disarray. Even though it had just been a few months, Mom appeared to have aged significantly. She started crying again the second she laid eyes on me. I couldn't make sense of the conflicting feelings coursing through me as I comforted her while she sobbed. Mom gave me a glance with crimson-rimmed eyes once she cooled down. I've been so foolish, she whispered. The last several months have really enlightened me. I was completely mistaken on a lot of things, including you and Emma. She grasped both of my hands. Even though you were the reliable one who I could always rely on, I failed to recognize your worth and instead treated you like a commodity. My deepest apologies, my love. My own eyes started to brim up with tears. I never imagined I would get this kind of recognition, yet here it was. I want you, even though I know I don't deserve it, Mom went on to say. Are you thinking about returning home? Trust me when I say things are going to change. Looking at Mom, vulnerable and sincerely sorry, made me realize I couldn't turn my back on her, no matter how much I wanted to deny in order to shield myself from more harm. All right, Mom, I whispered. I'll come back, but things really do need to be different this time. A wave of relief swept over her as she enthusiastically nodded. They will be, I promise. Now I find myself back in my childhood home. It's weird, unsettling, yet somehow soothing all at once. My mother and I are working on improving our communication and mutual appreciation. My graphic design work has captured her attention, and she has even asked me to teach her the basics. Collaboratively, we are cleaning up the house and resolving the financial crisis that Emma caused. It's challenging, but we're making it work. We have not received any communication from Emma. She has my deepest sympathies, and I pray she is safe, but I can't shake the rage she inspired. Thanks to Mom's understanding, I'm able to keep up with my internship and freelancing job. Finding that sweet spot is going to take some time, but we're getting there. What is ahead is completely unknown to me. A part of me is still cautious, still trying to keep my emotions under check, but I also have hope. Perhaps this is the opportunity for a new beginning that our family has been seeking. For the time being, it suffices. It's not the happily ever after I had envisioned, but it is real.